grandfather right away told Label what happened, the Label Groner, and the Label told him to write to the Rebbe right away all the details, and he'll bring it in as soon as he can. And he wrote to the Rebbe a very, very heartsick pan that the doctors are not giving her much hope. Rebbe Groner told me that Zaidy wrote into his pan then that he's giving her over as a daughter to the Rebbe.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Shalom Aleichem, Benji. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, Aleichem Shalom, Yossi.
Thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be here.
It's my honor and my pleasure to sit here today with you.
Okay. And in general, you've been very helpful to the Der Herr over the years. First of all, contributing, doing interviews for Der Herr, and also the topic that I want to discuss with you is about your Zaidy, Reb Dovid Raskin. And many, many times, Der Herr has published documents, pictures, answers from the Rebbe from the Raskin family archives from your Zaidy. So that's also a very big contribution that you have had in the Der Herr.
Yes, it's a big schos to be able to share all that information with you. Firstly, I want to take this opportunity to publicly thank you for all the work you do for Lubavitch. The Der Herr is a household name in every Mosid, in every Lubavitcher house. And I understand what it takes to get something published, and the fact that you get this going out every month for about 15 years now is very, very impressive. I happen to have every single Der Herr from Kislev Tavshin Ayin Beis, if I'm not mistaken, until Adar Pevav. And yeah, it's a real treasure.
Okay, Yashakayach Benji.
So about my grandfather. So it's interesting. I actually didn't know him that well growing up. He got sick a few years after Gimel Tammuz when I was a kid, and I only got to know him after he passed away. It's interesting. Looking through his archives, speaking to people. Firstly, the week of Shiva. That's how it really started. But growing up, my memories of him were more or less him always asking to say the Yubis Psukim. Whenever people called the house, we would always pass the phone around. Everyone had the opportunity to say the Yubis Psukim to him. And as well as Pesach, I remember one year Pesach, him talking about when he was in Amata, that his parents came. I couldn't understand much because of the language barrier, and I was young, but I was too young to fully appreciate who he was. Yeah.
And you're saying that after he passed away and you really started delving into both the archive that he left and also talking to Chassidim, which I know that you have a knack for speaking to people that are many, many years your senior, and you know their language, so you learned a lot about him from that.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, from when I was a kid, I would always get whenever I would say my name, I'd always get the response, Psh, Reb Dovid Raskin. I never understood what that meant. For me, he was Zaidy. I never understood what the reaction was. I thought maybe everyone gets that. It's the way how you communicate with a kid to kind of praise his grandfather. But only once I grew up, I started really appreciating on what people meant, but like who this man was, Yeah.
So I want to focus on that a little bit. So you are right that Reb Dovid Zainikol, I mean, there's something about Reb Dovid Raskin that every person in Der Ashvi that knows what's going on really talks about him with a certain level of respect, and like he takes up a very, very prominent role in Der Ashvi. So before we get into the details of, I guess the history of, where he came from, and like what is that? What is the, if you had to put it in one or two paragraphs, what is it about Reb Dovid Raskin that makes him such a central figure?
Firstly, whenever I would approach someone about I'm working on this book, as you mentioned,
I don't think I mentioned the book.
Maybe before the podcast.
So you were working for the last few years, all of the archives and everything that you had. The end result is going to be, B'ezras Hashem, a beautiful sefer, a book about Dovid Raskin called the Avdi David, and you actually printed a few tatfisen, a few excerpts of the future book that people have really, really enjoyed so far.
Yeah. So when I would approach people for an interview, it's funny, I would get a variety of responses. Some people would say, a book on Reb Dovid, like how's that shaykh to put a larger-than-life personality in a book? How can you confine him in a book? And other people would say, to Reb Dovid, he didn't have any other life besides for the Rebbe. Others would say, Shvi shall Pesach verbringen. So that was, everyone had different responses, or a funny, interesting episode when they were Bachar 770, or they got involved with the Putam Tzach. The interesting thing is, virtually almost every single Bachar and Lubavitch interacted with him at one point or another throughout their Bachar years, or even, the first years of living in Crown Heights. Just because the central role that he played in the Meistis, everyone, I can't say everyone, but almost anyone that I approached had a memory or a interesting story to say about him.
Right.
Which was
and he had multiple roles. And Tzach, Adam Sader. He's also part of Aguch. I'm saying there's many roles, many hats that he wore.
Yeah.
That's the famous joke, right? That there was a meeting of Aguch, Tzach, Timchet Mimim, Adam Sader, and maybe another organization. And there's only one person there, Reb Dovid. Okay, so let's.
I actually heard from someone once that he wanted to organize a mitzvah parade, this Bacher. So, because of the two roles that Zaidy played, he responded to him, Mitzad.
What was the question?
No, if you can arrange a mitzvah parade for, I forgot which Yom the Pagar was. So Zaidy answered him, Mitzad Sach. It's not a problem, but Mitzad Yeshiva, there's no rishos. How he would use those two roles in one, it's interesting.
They say a story about Rabbi Chadikov. Isn't there a story of David about it? That Rabbi Chadikov had a simcha in his family, and he called, maybe it was I don't know exactly what it was, maybe it was a shidduch, and he called to give the answer from Maskiris that the Rebbe answered, for let's say for the shidduch. Then he hung up the phone, Rabbi Chadikov, and he picked up the phone again, and as a father, and said Mazel Tov, two different roles.
Yeah. These were the Rebbe's people.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of Reb Dovid, where he comes from, where he's born, and obviously who his parents and Zaidas were, and then we'll do it like that.
So he was born on Yud Beis Nisan, Tav Reish Pei Zayin. It's April 1927 in Babroisk, Belarus. His parents were Rabbi Bentzion Pearson. His mother's name was Dreza, and her maiden name was Kaplan. She was a daughter of the Chassid Menachem Mendel Kaplan. He was known as Mendel der Chassid. There are many interesting stories about him. Actually, the Deher printed an article about him, which I think Mendy Greenberg prepared, and I was able to assist him with that article. But He was a legendary chassid. There's we can talk about him later, but that's on one. That's on his mother's side. Then the other side, his other Zayda was the chassid Rabbi Bentzion Raskin, my namesake, and he was known as Reb Bentzion Raskin. Both sides, the lineage goes all the way back. I don't know so much about the Kaplan, but definitely their Raskin side goes back all the way to the times of the Magid, maybe even the Baal Shem Tov, actually.
Yeah.
But the first Raskin is Reb Dovid, that was his name. And he was born a few years after the Magid Sistalkus.
He was a chassid al Rebbe.
He was, I'm not sure if the Alter Rebbe yet was Kalman Nisias, but he been that Kufa. I think he lived in Gorky or so, but both sides. His father, his Zayder, Chaim Bentzion, was Bab Mesilas Nefesh Yid, especially for Chinuch. If the Rebbe says in a Sikha, he once spoke in a Sikha about him, that there's a Yid that lives not far from Moscow. He wakes up every morning, I think maybe it's at 4 a.m. or so, and he says Tehillim with bitter tears. Was weint what causes these tears is that he asked the Eibush there that his children in Eniklach should grow up to be Erlich Yidden. In those times, communism, etc., it was a very big challenge to have all your children go in the, Derech Yishara. And to have that bracha, if the Rebbe gave a bracha that, it should help that it should be that way, and you can see that all of his children in Eniklach, they were all K'nai Hara. They were all Emes Chasidim, Bal Mesiras Nefesh, v'chulu, v'chulu. We still see the Peiros today. So that's Bentzion Raskin. There are many interesting stories about him as well. You had to hear Reb Shlomo Zarchi a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. He's a cousin. He's a relative of ours, and he said some stories about. I think he spoke about Bentzion a little bit. But remember, one time, one of my interviews with him, he mentioned to me that Yisrael Jacobson once told Reb Shlomo that he remembers Bentzion Raskin once in a train station, and Reb Yisrael didn't daven yet. And he was hesitating if he should take out his tefillin now. Maybe it's a sakana, Goyim will see and start harassing. So Bentzion, he had you have to, maybe you've seen a picture of him. He had these balding eyes and like a very intense look of a chassid. He tells sich up yet, right now, stop what you're doing and put until now. Don't maybe it was close to the shkia, whatever it was, but he said the reishim had in him. Don't be nispal from your, the surroundings here. Put until now, and Zaidy put on his house and film, whatever it was, and don't be nispal. And remember Sarka Raskin, a relative Krachabad, told me that she's also an Einikol. She married her first cousin, my Zayda's brother Mendel, Krachabad. She said one Friday night she came home. This was in Leningrad. Bentzion came back from Kabbalah Shabbos. And she was a kid, maybe 4 or 5 years old, playing with some toys. So he said, "Good Shabbos, all the Eniklach. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos." And she told him good Shabbos, and she got back to what she was doing before. So he got up in her face and said, "Good Shabbos." He wanted her to say good Shabbos with a gefil. He wanted that resham to be in her, in her consciousness, that it's not stam some Yetzazayin, but today's Shabbos Kodesh, we mark it. And he wanted a great Mesiras Nefesh that his kids shouldn't go to Shkola, the communist school system. Then they've actually moved to cities. It's a whole arichis in order to escape that and to ensure that his kids in Eniklach have a Chassidish chinuch, Ataras Kodesh. But this was the background that my Zayda grew up on. This was the life circumstances and his roots. But my Zayda was born in Peizayin, Nisan Peizayin. So you need to remember this is just a few months before the Fidei Rebbe's arrest on Tesvav Sivan. And during that time, in general, Chassidim were really being persecuted. The Viasexia was really going down on them. And, Yaakov Yosef writes Rabbi Yaakov Yosef writes in his Yaman.
Your Zayda. Your elder Zayda.
How the Mamish took him out one night for, to give Eidos on whatever the Yaakov Yosef out, and they beat him. Broke his glasses, they really beat him, they tortured him, and the family had no idea where he was. They didn't know if he was still alive or if they took him somewhere. They ended up bringing him back the next day. They just brought him in for, to give them information. But it was very, very tough times. So everything was Mesiras Nefesh. His bar mitzvah was in 1940 in Leningrad. And at my uncle's bar mitzvah in Tafshin Lamed Gimel, 1973, I have heard on a recording of him talking there. And he says my bar mitzvah was in Leningrad in Tafshin, in the house of his aunt, Mumasara. Mumasara, the famous Mumasara, was my elder Zayda's sister. And it was such a matzav then, he says, we couldn't know where we'll be the next day. So they were constantly on the run. And B'chesed Elyon, the family escaped Leningrad in the summer of Tafshin Aleph, 1941, when Germany was invading Russia. And before they bombed the last tracks out of Russia, the Raskin family...
Not out of Russia, out of Russia proper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Raskin family, Baruch Hashem, managed to escape. And almost on the last train. Mm-hmm. So Baruch Hashem, and then from there, just we can, in each section we can talk hours about, but on each period. But they made it to Almaty in Kazakhstan on Cholamite Sukkot Tafshin Beis, still 1941, and they were there for the next 2 years or so.
Most of the Chassidim weren't in Almaty.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point you bring up. A lot of Chassidim, I think, ended up going to Samarkand or Tashkent. From that point, there probably was cities in between, of course, but Rabbi Yaakov Yosef writes in his Yaman, which I'm sure we'll get to soon, that like it says by Yosef, the Eibusher sent him to be Mechaya, his brothers, and Bnei Yisrael. That's why Yosef was sent to Mitzrayim. That's what Yosef told his brothers. And you didn't send me, the Eibusher sent me to be Mechayu. And he writes that b'yachas to the great schus him and his family had, to be Meshamish, the Rebbe's parents.
Okay, so they came to Almaty before the Rebbe's father came, right?
2 years before, yeah.
2 years before. So when the Rebbe's father came, they were already, they knew the territory.
Yeah, the Rebbe's
father only came after
Pesach Tafshin Dalet.
Right.
The Rebbe's parents only lived in Almaty from after Pesach Tafshin Dalet till Chafav.
Basically, after his sentence was finished,
in Chile.
He was in Chile. Then after the sentence was finished, then he moved to Almaty. And then that was, you said Pesach, Tafshin Dalet?
That's when they arrived, yeah.
So from
Pesach. He was already involved in part of the team bringing him from Chile to Almaty, where a few Chassidim lived. But he was, he already had a yachas. Actually, the first time he met Rebbe Leivik, I think. Yeah, was in Asifas Rabbanim in Tafresh Ayin Zayin. This is 1917 or so. He actually wrote he had a beautiful ksav. You have to see some of his Yamanim. He has every letter is like an art. Anyways, so the Rebbe Leivik asked him to write the minutes of the meeting of Rabbanim. And the minutes or a psak that, whatever it was, maybe the particle, whatever it was that was discussed then. And I think either maybe he copied over to more people. There was no copy machine then, obviously. So maybe he copied over the whatever it is. It's in the Yamanim. But the point that was the first encounter that he had with him, first interaction, and then afterwards, in Tafshin Dalet, of course, him and his sons and his daughter had a great schos to be there with to serve him and his Rebbetzin Chana. schus that the Rebbe was treasured very much, and there's a lot more to talk about. And once my Zayda came to America,
one of my few memories of it. I mean, I had many memories of your grandfather, but the problem is that he was physically not well when I was old enough to remember everything. I mean, I saw him every Shabbos, but he wasn't in his prime. But one of the things I do remember is him talking in 770 on Chafav stories of the Rebbe's father. That's one thing I do remember. What's the story with the shefer of the Rebbe's father that has to do with your grandfather?
So when Rabbi Yosef and his family was living on Mata, this was late Tafshin Dalid or so, maybe Alul Tafshin Dalid. I think he was going to Moscow then. He had to get out because they wanted information about the Rebbe's father, authorities, etc. Anyways,
I'm not
so
following. After the Histalkus of the Rebbe's father?
After the Histalkus. Okay, so but the Histalkus itself, Rabbi Yosef was a shliach vanash to find the makom and chasei for the Rebbe's father in the cemetery.
So the whole thing in Almaty that was arranged by your grandfather.
He was a shliach of the Chaver Gadisha or the Anash there, Rabbi Rabinowitz, Nemaitin. There were a few Anash living there then, but he was the shliach Anash. He writes in his Yaman to find he had an arrangement with the Chaver Gadisha to block off the plots around where Rebbe Leivik would be, and to make sure that Tzimchul would take a place. Were you ever there, Amata?
No, but it was ascribed to me that it's like in the middle of.
I was able to be there twice, and it's literally there's no other words to describe in Galus Shibetech Galus, Pashbegashmis, seeing all the Kfarim and where he is, like deep in a Geisha cemetery, and this one part blocked off where there's a nash, and then later they built an oil for him. But we see in Sichas that I was talking about that he passed away in Galus. Until you go there, you don't really understand what that even means until like you see Mamish Galus B'Sich Galus. So it's a big schos that he had. I think he was involved with the Tatar as well. So after that, as he was leaving, after the Raskin family was leaving Amata, he asked Rebbe Tzachana that he doesn't know where he's going to be Tishrei, if he'll have a shefer. And the Rebbe's father had a black shefer, I think that belonged to the Marash, that he yashed from his father, to Tzedek. And he asked if he could, use it or have it, whatever the arrangement was. So she was maskim. And then in Tafshin Yud, and it's actually the letter printed in Ikris, Chaf Aleph of Tafshin Yud, the Rebbe writes to him if you can please send the shofar to him through Baruch Haskind, who was coming then from Eretz Yisrael to New York. And as a matana, he would give him a handkerchief that belonged to the Frierdiker Rebbe. There was some hesitation on Rabbi Yosef's end. It's a prize item. I mean, you have to remember also, he never met the Rebbe. And I think he was actually a year even older. So you have to put things in the context. It's like, obviously, it's a son, and the Rebbe was before the Messias, but there was hesitation on the fact that the Rebbe wrote to him that the handkerchief is getting thinner and thinner, because I don't either people were taking material from it. I don't know exactly what the issue was then, but I actually have a little piece that Mezeda kept for himself.
What's the Rebbe saying that? Rebbe's giving a time frame for it.
Yeah, I saw in an interview with my uncle Rabbi Dovid Raskin, Allah Shalom, from Morocco, how he's describing it. You can see it on Gem. It's actually one of the first my encounters of Gem is the interview with Rabbi Dovid Raskin. So he's matired there that es werd kleiner and kleiner, that the material, the napkin, whatever it was coming smaller and smaller, and basically to Chaperein, with sending the shefer. And in that same letter, he actually writes to Yaakov Yosef as well to send Zechrenis of his father. This is a hemshech to the Rebbe asked my Zayda 2 days earlier, the day before the Chafaf Bringen, to write Zechrenis, to tell him Zechrenis of his father. My Zayda wrote.
The Rebbe, this is in Tafshin Yud.
Yeah,
The
they
Rebbe
told him he was only 17 years old, so he doesn't remember much. But the Rebbe should ask his father, Rabbi Yosef, because he definitely remembers more. So the following day, the Rebbe sent a letter asking Rabbi Yosef to send him Zechrenis. The Rebbe actually spoke in that Fabring in Chafaf Tafshin Yud, various Nekudas that Zayda told him that he remembered from his father Teres.
Mm. And so ultimately, your great grandfather sent the shofar, and the Rebbe would one of the various shofars that the Rebbe would come down every year Rosh Hashanah.
Every year, yeah.
Was that black shofar?
Even when the Rebbe didn't blow from it, he brought it down just to have it on the bima.
Yeah.
In that same letter, actually, the last paragraph, it's a beautiful letter. The Rebbe writes, "Bizdabnezu." I would like to take this opportunity to express to you the great hana that I have, Me'anhagas b'nei Marina Reb Dovid Shechia, from the conduct of your son Reb Dovid, and may all the brachas of the Fidik Rebbe be mekoyim and him and the rest of your children, Amilun in its entirety. But it was a very powerful bracha, and it shows him, you have to remember, they didn't know what the kid is up to. You have to think about it. They're living in Eretz Yisrael. The son is in Brooklyn. To give a background, my Zayda departed from the family. You want to get into that now?
I just want to ask you one question before that. What was your grandfather's involvement with the Rebbe's father?
So during the time in Amata, Tafshin Dalid, he was zeiche to put on tefillin with him, help him with tefillin. He writes, my Zayda wrote to the Rebbe that he was very medayik, that the kesher of the Shalrei should be ala erif, like mamish on the.
He was unwell then, so he didn't help.
They spent time together. Each son, I think, had another shift that they would spend time with him. It's a famous story. Reb Dovid Raskin, my great uncle from Kfar Chabad, had a famous story on Erev Tisha B'Av when Leivik held him for an extended period of time, and later he realized that the reason was because they came looking for him. The authorities came to draft him for the war, and they understood only afterwards why Leivik kept on holding him. The fast already started, and it's a lot of details to that story and other stories from that period, which Mr. Shem will be in the book.
So he helped him with film, and that's what I remember your grandfather speaking about, actually, at the film.
Yeah, film was a big one. And in general, just being there, preparing tea, whatever it was. Unfortunately, Leivik was very, very unwell then. He remembers him talking Torah constantly. Torah was always, his lips were always moving. Thing at the end, he was heard saying, I think maybe the Rebbe Tzachana writes about that, how you would, to himself. But yeah. I mean, he had a tremendous chos, him and his siblings and his sister, Tzivi Bravin. And that relationship continued with Rebbe Tzachana, of course, throughout the years, till her stalkus on Tafshin Chafei.
And like you said, throughout the years, the Rebbe was very, very miyaker. The Rebbe cherished very much anybody that had anything to do. I think the way the Rebbe said it, people that helped in Kibbutz Av, in the Rebbe's Kibbutz Av.
Yeah, they were Malik Kibbutz Av for the Rebbe. They were his shluchim.
Yeah, the Rebbe.
In that sense, yeah.
The Rebbe really, really appreciated anybody that had anything to do with that. Which is something that was discussed on the interview I did with Rabbi Levi Grelik. Okay, so 1
year actually maybe he mentioned this at Chafaf Bringen, the Rebbe called over my Zayda by the Negunim and asked to ask Geshem Mendel if he was Mishamish his father. I think it was Lamed Dalet, Shnasa Shleshim. Anyways, so Zayda went over to him. Geshem Mendel stood over there on the left side, and he gave over the message that Rebbe will listen and Mishamish given the Tatan. So Geshem Mendel, he smiled. So he said, for them, like the Rebbe was waiting for an answer. So either maybe it was his shoulders, and he smiled. Anyways, Zayda went back to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said no. So he said, Geshmeichot. So that's how that ended. But But yeah, every chafaf bringing, the Rebbe would tell him, Zaidy to say l'chaim. And if his brothers were there, then they should say l'chaim as well. He sent to Yarchikal every year to say zechrenis for his father. Yaakov Yesa went to Yarchikal a few years that he came in for chafav. And yeah, there was miyakir like you can't imagine. They gave the mezenis and the mashke the Yarchikal to Yaakov Yesa and his sons to share anything they could about his father's life.
Yeah. Okay. So how did he leave Russia? He went with the Shalom and with everyone else. Like how did that work?
What year are you referring to?
I'll tell him when he. Yes. What's the continuation of his journey?
So Tavshin Hey, he was in Samarkand. There, his mashpia was.
The family moved, or he went to yeshiva.
Yeah, he went to with the family together.
They moved to Samarkand. Okay.
Yeah, his mashpia there was Rabbi Chaim Riedplat. Could be Rabbi Nissen was there as well. And there he, this is the first, you have to remember, this is the first time he was in a yeshiva. He was on the run his entire life till that point. He's 18 at this point. And this is the first time that he was really in a yeshiva. Tavshin Hey.
See, by the time it was old enough for him to be in yeshiva, they're already running away from the Nazis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't do the underground thing like he did in Samarkand, but not in Russia.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier when the Frierdiker Rebbe was leaving Russia on Isra Chag Sukkos Tafresh Beiches. So my Alter Zayde, my namesake Rabbi Bentzion Raskin, sent a letter to all of his children. It was called Gezeres Abo. Like this is a letter you have to better listen to. He wanted all of his children to be by the Frierdiker Rebbe there before he left Russia. Yeah. So as he was leaving Leningrad, he told his he was running after the train with his children. I think Beker, his son, Reb Shlema. As the train was taking off, look at the smoke. Look at the smoke of the train. He was trying to get the very last moments with the Frierdiker Rebbe because they knew this was it. Derech HaTeva, they weren't going to see the Frierdiker Rebbe again. But Shalom Razov, I think was a kid then. I think the Frierdiker Rebbe told him, he was 4 years old, that Meveln sich sein Nachamol or something, like we will see each other again, and which we'll get to in a few moments.
Did Reb Dovid see the Frierdiker Rebbe as a child?
So it's interesting.
He was a little kid. He was a baby.
Zaidy was a half-year-old.
Right.
He was born Nisan. This is Tishrei. Him and all of his friends, you have to remember that I don't think this period in general is fully appreciated in the sense that there was a full generation of Chassidim with Mason Nefesh with the Frierdiker Rebbe never saw him. I mean, it's obviously very applicable to today's period, in today's era after Gimel Tammuz, but it's remarkable to think about that Zaidy and all of that entire generation never saw until America. Zaidy just saw the Frierdiker Rebbe a month before his Yistalkus, which we'll get into soon. But if he was delayed a month, he wouldn't have ever seen the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's a very powerful lesson, something to think about.
Right.
So he comes to America.
1 second.
Yeah.
He's in Samarkand. And then how does he leave?
So he's in Samarkand, and then the family moves to Peking in Tafshin Vav.
With the Great Escape, Shalom. Okay. He goes to
Tafshin
Peking.
Zion or so. He ends up in Paris by Reb Nissen in the yeshiva over there. And then he was there for 3 years or so. And during that period, I interviewed some of those his colleagues, his classmates from that period, and they all told me that they all, of course, want to see the Frierdiker Rebbe. That was their, lifelong dream to be united with the Frierdiker Rebbe, to see him for the first time. But I remember Shalom Ber Shanovitz was telling me we all wanted to see the Frierdiker Rebbe, but Reb Dovid was the one pressuring Reb Nissen and sending letters to Remember Rashag was the one that had to officially send a letter to the American Consul in
to
France.
Get a visa.
The visa, yeah, it was a
Student
very complicated. Visa. Yeah, it's a very complicated process. But Zaidy was on it, and you have duches, you can see over here of panim, that he sent to the Frierdiker Rebbe.
That's what that
begging, is? Yeah, some of it's in there.
That's a panted Fidik Rebbe?
This is something else. But in that binder, there are panim to Fidik Rebbe that like at the end of Rosh Hashanah, Tafshin Zayin, Tafshin Ches, she'eske li Serois, wollen sich sehen mit dem Fidik Rebbe, bekar mamish, when a letter from the Fidik Rebbe came to wherever they were in Peking or in Benoit, it was like a big simcha. That there's a Rebbe in Brooklyn, New York, 770 Eastern Parkway. They verbringt about the address, 770 Eastern Parkway. They didn't know what that was. They didn't know where it was, which planet it was, but they knew there's a Rebbe on the other side of the world thinking about them and giving them a bracha of Shana Teva and all of that. So, so my Zaidy was non-stop writing to America to Fidik Rebbe about it. And then you see a letter in Igris that Fidik Rebbe writes to Reb Nissen that there's a group of Bachrim that can come to America, and my Zaidy was on that list. And his Seitzchem de Shalom with Reperetz, Machkin, and Benoit was a very hard to get Seitzchem de Shalom. It was a Bacher going from France to first Russian Bacher.
Well, he went separately. It was a group, but he went on his own.
Yeah, there was a group of. There was a basic. I think he got his papers before the rest of the group that was supposed to be sent from Paris to New York. He got a letter from the Fidik Rebbe in advance that the Nesiya should be Kshura, Benekel, V'chul, and he writes his father afterwards that the boat ride from Paris to America was very stormy, and they didn't know what it would be. I mean, the captain warned passengers that, of the worst, God forbid, and he writes, holding the letter of the Fidik Rebbe, gave me that security and calm that I'll make it there, Batzlacha, B'kachave. He arrived in America on Zeis Chanukah, Tafshin Yud, 1949 or 1950. Probably was 1950.
2 months
already.
before Yud Shvat, Tafshin Yud.
Yeah. And
meanwhile, his parents already went to Eretz Yisrael. That's later.
Yeah.
Before this.
His parents already went to Yisrael, Tafshin Tes.
And he stayed in Paris, whatever, Benoit.
Him and his brother Shalom Ber.
To stay in the
was
yeshiva.
married there. Yeah, he got married there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But my Zaidy's entire shifa then was like David HaMelech, the original David, writes and tell him, Achas Sha'alti, Meis Hashem, Shivti B'vis Hashem Kol Mechayim, V'achas B'nei Hashem L'vaki B'choli. That was his only wish, his only dream. And that's how it happened. The next 60 years was, Kol Mechayim Kipshuta. He was in 770. And yeah.
When he arrived, he had Yichidus with the Fidik Rebbe. Wasn't there a thing with 2 Yichidusin?
Yeah.
And he asked the Rebbe about it? I remember such a story.
So he arrived, as I mentioned, in Zeis Chanukah. He asked the Gabi then, Eliyahu Simpson, for Yichidus. He was granted Yichidus a few days later, on Hey Tevis, actually. He went to Yichidus. Fidik Rebbe welcomed him and asked him how his father was doing, how the family was, whatever, just, more technisch, kilo. And then gave him a bracha, but he stadrus teva. So after the Yechidus on Hey Tevis, he went downstairs to the Rebbe, our Rebbe, and he was very mavuvel. He wasn't sure what the Fidik Rebbe meant.
Stadrus teva usually means like marriage, no?
Yeah, he came to learn. He didn't understand. So the Rebbe called Eliyahu from upstairs. And Eliyahu said there's no reason for him to be mevuvel.
Who called?
The Rebbe.
Our Rebbe.
Known as the Ramash, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He called upstairs and he said there's a Rabbi Raskin that just arrived. And he wanted to know what the Shver just told him. He has some, he's a little difficulty understanding what the Fizik Rebbe's Kavana was. So Eliyahu told him that there's no reason for him to be mevuvel. The Rebbe Sachakol told him that he wanted to know how his father was doing in Parnasa, Chulu, and stadrus doesn't necessarily mean work. It can also mean, to be settled.
Settle in.
Yeah. And Zaidy wasn't a young bacher then. He was already 23 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He was born Pei Zayin, Tafshin Yud. And this was the first Yechidus. This in his first Cheder, his first interaction with the Rebbe that he records in his Iman and his letter to his father afterwards.
There was a story that the rest of the group came from Paris, from France.
Yeah. So on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, a few weeks later, the rest of the group arrived. The group was
Shalom
Razov, Berel Yunik, Shlemi Yitzchak Pevzner, and Gedalia Korf. The group was 5 Bachrim. They arrived a little earlier, but it was 5 boys. And they were known as the illustrious Bachrim. You have to remember this was American yeshiva, and you have these 5 Russian boys arriving.
The Russians arrived.
Which is the whole sugya b'fnei how that worked out. But it did work out. It was a revolution that till today, the Seidim Tim Ch'tzmim is because of that group that arrived then. But when they arrived, they asked for Yechidus right away. Remember, this is the first time seeing the Fidei Rebbe in their lives, besides for Shalom Marazov, who basically grew up in the Fidei Rebbe's house because of his father, Reb Chanya. So what happened was the Rebbe, the Ramash, was prepared them for Yechidus. They had no idea what Yechidus meant, so they never went in. He said to put it on a gartel, under their jacket, about Shechianu. They asked a few other things, and they went into. They asked Rabbi Yeichel then was in, I think it was in Florida, fundraising. It was a Shadar as well. So, Mesha Leib Rotstein was a masker for that Yechidus. When he brought them in, so they asked Mesha Leib for Yechidus, and they arrived on Thursday. So let me go back again. So they arrived on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and they wanted, this is on Thursday, and they wanted to go into Yechidus right away. So the Mesha Leib told them this is not the Seder. The Seder is first we hear Dach, and then you go into Yechidus. That's the Seder of a Chassid. And they told him, respectfully, that the Rebbe is not saying Chassidus anymore. The Fidei Rebbe then is mamish this is literally the week of the Stalkus. So they said the Fidei Rebbe is not saying Chassidus at this point. He said it's not Negea. If we don't hear, the Rebbe is Chassidus. And those who hear whatever the Lashon was.
Shabbos.
And Shabbos, the Rebbe is Chassidus. And then you go into Yechidus after that. So they talk about Yechidus on Sunday, Daled Shvat, which that was their tradition for years afterwards to bring on Daled Shvat. That was their, Chassidish Yom Holedus. If Fidei Rebbe told them then, welcome, and it should be well, everything should go well. And he told them, Hein zet mit sich, today we see each other, and from time to time, each one of you will go and come in separately into Yechidus. Fidei Rebbe told them then, wanted to know what their Seder was. And again, Chassidus and Nigla, everything like that. Spanish before davening. And Fidei Rebbe told them that lernen Muzman, lernen Dafman, Davnen Muzman, aber lernen darf man Rechet. You have to learn, you must daven, but you have to learn as well. So they understood that to mean, of course, Chassidus before davening, and then Nigla after davening. Until that point, Seder Chassidus, I think then was only a half hour or so, only started later, maybe 8:30 to 9. And they introduced a whole new system in the yeshiva system. Chassidus should be an hour. There should be time for Spanish before davening, mikveh before. The entire spiel, how it was in Paris and how it was in the original Talmud Chachamim. And then there was Rosh Yeshiva Gustman. I don't know if you want to get into that now.
And if I recall correctly, there was a dilemma that your grandfather had if he's allowed to go into Yechidus with the group, because he already went before. He had Yechidus already, but he's part of this group. So he asked the Rebbe, right?
Yes, Mesha Leib Raskin.
Mesha Leib, okay.
Yeah, if he's allowed to, if he can go in Shum Eifen, he didn't allow him in.
Okay.
They didn't ask him. Mesha Leib told him, you're not going, you already went in a few weeks earlier. But this was Zaidy's nature, that he didn't take no for an answer. eine action that he wants to go in. This is we're all sent together from the Fidik Rebbe to come here, and we're part of one group. I technically got the papers early, but it's not. We're all part, And Fidik Rebbe acknowledged each one of them when they came into Yechidus. When it came to Shalom, Fidik Rebbe gave a little punktetate.
Punktetate.
Yeah, Schania was the famous masker. And then for each one, I think for Beryl Yonik, Fidik Rebbe said, Naftali, ich ken him. Like there was a beautiful yachas between each bacher, and a very warm welcome. And this is how it was for the first kufa or so, and then the Istalkus came, to the shock of everyone. Everyone knew the health condition of the Fidik Rebbe, but no one was expecting a Istalkus Yud Shvat Shabbos morning. That Shabbos, they went on Sunday night. That Shabbos was the Yechidus. Shabbos Yud Shvat, I think it was 10 to 8 in the morning. The Zaidy's Matayr, he describes in his Yaman exactly what happened. And it was a devastating Shabbos. Learn about the Rebbe's Istalkus. You can't imagine the feeling of the Bachram then. They finally came to Fidik Rebbe. You have to put, trying to imagine yourself in their shoes. And all of a sudden, this happens. It's like a few weeks later. Big shake.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidische Yom Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikr needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidische Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with Chassidische Yom Tov.
So maybe talk a little bit about the Tekufa after the Istalkus of the Fidik Rebbe, and when the Rebbe, that year before the Rebbe accepted the Nesius officially, openly. I understand that the Bachrim played a very big role in that process, because the Bachrim right away connected very much to the Rebbe, and I understand your grandfather was part of that.
Yeah. So from the moment of Fidik Rebbe's Istalkus, Bo Hashemish, V'Zorach Hashemish, the Bachrim instantly attached themselves to the Rebbe. There was like an automatic attraction between the Bachrim to the Rebbe, especially the Russian Bachrim, which is a fascinating fact for its own. And
so the Biel showed up. That's another element.
Biel showed up, I think, 2 weeks later.
Yeah, right after the Istalkus.
Yeah, after the Shiva even. So this is so already during the Levaya, I know my grandfather was a little involved over there with the morning of. I think he was sent to help prepare the kever. During the week of Shiva, him and his friends made sure to be there at all the minyanim and to hear all the sichos that the Rebbe would say after each day of Shiva. which is later printed in Teres Menachem, Chelik Aleph.
The stories.
Stories,
that's,
etc. Yeah. And then about what was it? This is Beis Nissen Tafshin Yod. Beis Zaidy, this is just two months after the Istalkus. Beis Zaidy and his friend Gedali Korf approached the Rebbe to verbring for the Bachrim on the Rebbe Rashab's Yemilula. So the Rebbe asked them, why don't they ask the Mashpim the Yeshiva to verbring? Bisar Jacobson, Shmuel Levitten. So they told the Rebbe that they were ready for verbring the night before. Now they want the Rebbe to verbring, which was a strong statement.
They said the Rebbe.
Yeah. So the Rebbe asked them a few questions for all the Bachrim, or just for the Russian Bachrim, for the Alter Bachrim, for the younger. There was a few questions. You can see how serious the Rebbe took them. That he was actually inquiring who the verbring was for. Then the Rebbe took out a calendar from his drawer, from his desk drawer, and looked through it and said, Bli neder and a chaydet site, Beis ear, he would Bli neder make a hold of verbringen.
Yeah, Marash.
For the Marash's Yemuledus. But that was this is the first time the Rebbe would verbring on a weekday. I think the Rebbe, when he arrived to America, he verbringed that. But at that point, the Rebbe only verbring the Shabbos Mevarchim. That's a hero from the future Rebbe. But this would be the first time that the Rebbe would verbring on a weekday.
So it was a breakthrough.
Yeah. In general, there was a lot of breakthroughs in that kufa from the Russische Bachrim. There's friction also, of course, from the regular, structure and standard how things were before. But it was actually at Rosh Yeshiva then Harav Gustman, who was actually a very talented Maggid Shir in Rosh Yeshiva. The Bachrim enjoyed his children very much, but he didn't grow up with the Chassidish culture and the Chassidus before davening and daven bariches.
He was a Litvish Rosh Yeshiva.
Yeah, Litvish Yeshiva. And basically, this new Hanhaga didn't fit well with him.
And the new Hanhaga of the Russian Bachrim.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't stick around for too much longer. Rabbi Pekarsky later took him over, and he stayed at Yeshiva until his passing, I think in Gimel or so. But the Bachrim then created a revolution. There's no question about it. So Beis Nissen, the Yechidus was very interesting that they got the Rebbe to be maskim, and the Rebbe verbring the Beis ear then. And in that Yechidus, the Rebbe really laid out the work. In that verbring in the Beis ear, the Rebbe really laid out the work for what he expected from Bachrim and what he expected from this young new generation that he was now molding to be his soldiers in the army that the Rebbe envisioned to build. This was, literally day one from everything that Rebbe wanted to create later on.
Okay.
The Rebbe spoke in that Verbringen about the concept of Avedus im Atzmei, Avedus im Azulas, that the Bacher has to know the keiches that the Rebbe invests in the Bacher, the Chai Yichida, in the Chai that the Bacher has to repay that those keiches with his own Chai Yichida. And the Rebbe spoke very strong about Chazan Chassidus and Shuls and learning with Bachrim about the yeshivas. This was in the beginning of Shlichus. Today in Hadar you have Meistes and Shluchim, thousands and thousands around the world, but this was literally the building blocks of what Shlichus would become. The whole concept of reaching out, going out of your comfort zone, and connecting Yidden to the Rebbe. The Rebbe then talks about what a Rebbe is. There was a Bacher that came to Yechidus, and not a Lubavitch Bacher. And he wanted to know what a Rebbe was. The Rebbe described to him what the concept of a Rebbe is, and he was taking notes. The Rebbe told the Bachrim in the Verbringen that that guy had a Rebbe on paper. That's not what a Rebbe is, of course. Something much deeper and much more personal. But that was that Verbringen of Beis ear. And then on Beis Sivan, a month later, Zaidy had a Yichidus, I think his first Yichidus with the Rebbe. And then a follow-up Yichidus and Rosh Chodesh Tammuz a month later. But those Yichidus in general, from Beis Ear until in those few months, the Rebbe was addressing many of the Sichas then to the Talmidei Yeshiva. Like Be'emer, there was a very geschmack verbinding, and then about the Yisedus of a Bacher and the of Iskashrus and all that. The Rebbe was mamish educating a generation of what Iskashrus is. And those few months really molded Zaidy and all of his chaverim for the rest of their lives in a very fundamental and personal way. So Zaidy went to Yichidus on Beis Sivan. Beis Sivan, the Rebbe then spoke to him about, he clarified a few things from that Fabringen, and he told the Rebbe then that there's some issues when it comes to, I think Chassidus before davening, he always, he was asking the Rebbe for adracha of how many times to think about a certain things, and the Rebbe answered him on that. Then the Rebbe told him something very powerful. He told the Rebbe, he complained that, not complained, he just, as a chassid does in Yichidus, he said that he learned Chassidus and it's not pale on him. So the Rebbe answered him that now it is as if you're walking with your eyes closed. This is the Hanacha in the Yichidus that I'm reading now from. Then the Rebbe adds in his Ksav Yad, Avol Hashemesh.
He gave in the transcript of his Yichidus to the Rebbe.
Actually after the Yichidus of Fidik Rebbe, the Rebbe of when the Bacher went in, the second Zaidy's second Yichidus on Daled Shvat Tafshin Yud. So the Rebbe, Zaidy went to the Rebbe afterwards, the Ramash, and the Rebbe told him basically to make sure there's a copy of that Yichidus with the Fidik Rebbe, with the Shver, and make another copy as well. So I'll bring it in when the opportunity comes up. Unfortunately, stock has happened a few days later, but Zaidy, I think, learned from that Yichidus, from the with the Rebbe then, to always to send into the Rebbe a copy, a nacha of the Yichidus.
So on that Yichidus, the Rebbe added in Ksav Yad that what?
So on that Yichidus, so Zaidy wrote a nacha and he gave it to the Rebbe, and he wrote to the Rebbe then, he doesn't always feel that Chassidus is pale on him. So the Rebbe wrote to him that now it's as if you're walking blindly. Then the Rebbe adds, Avol Hashemesh Zereach, but the sun is shining. Meaning to say is, sometimes we feel that we learn Chassidus and we stay the same as we were before. The Rebbe is basically telling him the effect is happening, whether you're conscious of it or not.
The formula is working.
Yeah, it's working, And sometimes we feel it more than others, the other times, but emes is emes, and it will eventually, hit home. So this was Beis Sivan. He went to Yichidus again on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz to follow up from that Yichidus and to discuss things that were said in Fabringens during that period. This was his whole life, basically, just to carry out what the Rebbe spoke about by Fabringens, and this was his guide for the next 60 plus years. His whole life really consisted of just pu'ula after pu'ula, of just carrying out the Rebbe's will to the best of his capacity. And
So, is there anything else from that year that you want to share in particular? Because before I go to my next question,
Tafshin Yud. There's so much. It's an entire, at least 50 pages more, probably even 100 pages in the book just about this. There's so many interactions with the Rebbe. The Rebbe wanted to know about certain people. How come does he come to Melav Malkus? Does he not? Dachzich and Rashi did come to, the Rebbe would check in with him about different people and different things that were happening, updates. And then there was the Vad Lechazaras Dach that was established then.
Okay, so my next question was, the askanus of your grandfather, I believe, started when he was a bacher. So
Very
how
much
did
so.
that? How did that start? What was the first thing? And I guess that's the Vad Lechazaras Dach.
Yeah, so there was this committee of Bachrim, of course, called Vad Lechazaras Dach. They were responsible to send out yeshiva students from 770 to Chazer Chassidus.
So who established
on
this committee? The Bachrim?
I think the Rebbe himself.
The Rebbe himself did it. So this is what you were talking about, that the Rebbe speaking about Chazer Chassidus and, teaching Chassidus in other yeshivas. So the Rebbe made the Vad to implement that.
Yeah.
And your grandfather was?
So my grandfather was part of it, Rabbi Yael, Bishop Pesach Goldman, and it could be one of the Baumgartens, I'm not sure. But yeah, I interviewed Rabbi Yael about this extensively, and he shared a lot of interesting details about that. There was a Yechidus. The Rebbe spoke very strongly. He called them in once, Haka more Bachrim or not Mishtatif. I'm getting a Rishima of those who, there are kach amount of boys in Zal, and I'm only getting, a very small percentage of that are actually going out on Shabbos afternoons to Chazer Chassidus.
So what were they doing? They were going to shuls to Chazer Chassidus,
Yep.
And then also going to other yeshivas to teach Chassidus?
Both, yeah. They were going to Chaim Berlin, Teda Radas. You have to remember this also. There was yeshivas in Crown Heights. On President Street, there was yeshivas. There were the koilos. They would go to various yeshivas in Williamsburg and Borough Park and Lower East Side. Many Anash families. I personally interviewed a few that were niskardet to Lubavitch from these bachrim, from these Tanya Kviesin.
Yeah, I'm saying that's the story of
Metzger.
everyone. Misha Feller, all these people, they talk about the Bachrim and the Yuds that would come to their yeshiva. We just interviewed Rabbi Sirota in the Deher magazine. Talks about the Rebbe Shem Tov coming to teach Tanya in Yeshiva University. So this is all part of this.
Right, that was much later though, yeah. But it's very important, I think, that Bachrim should know that the revolution of Lubavitch really started from, Bachrim should never undermine his keiches, underestimate his keiches and his capabilities. Everything ultimately started from the Bachrim, and their hashpa, their sense of influence is tremendous.
Right, when the Rebbe wanted to get it done,
that's how it worked all the years. It was always every mitzvah, every pula, everything started from the Bachrim. They were the center nerve of Lubavitch. But they still are. But in regards to the Vad Lechazaras Dach, the Rebbe was very on top of that. And then Yalaf Nissen, Tafshin Yud Beis, the Rebbe said a maimer in his room for the Rebbe then was turning 50. Hashem Sfasei Tiftach, and the Rebbe wrote on it Rishima, who was allowed to enter the room for the maimer, about 20 people or so. So my Zaidy and Mishra Pesach Goldman were on the Rishima. Rabbi Yael told me that the Rebbe noticed him on the Zait. The Rebbe said, "Tu chazes dach tesiches," like it's like a kirov. You please come in as well.
To Rabbi Yael.
Yeah. It wasn't clear from him if he was on. I'm stomach he was on the Rishima beforehand, but he was the chazering the sichas and amarim all the time. But I guess it was a kirov that he got then. But yeah, then Erev Pesach that year, it was actually that same day on Yalaf Nissen Yud Beis, the Rebbe called in Vad Lechazaras Dach. I actually have the original Haggais right over here of that Yechidus, and the Rebbe said before the Bachrim leave for Pesach break for the Zman, I want you to give over to them that they should use out the time to Chazer Chassidus and Shuls, and I want to hear back from you. What was done, and et cetera, on that subject. That was the koch then. Anytime someone was going home from Montreal, the whole koch then, or Buffalo, whatever it was, stop in this shul, in who knows where, in upstate New York, wherever it was, The Rebbe always asked people to stop in various shtettelach to Chazak Chassidus. That means anything from the Fidzik Rebbe's Teira, from the Kutei Teira. You remember there was no sichas then. Kutei Sichas only started in Tavshin Chai or so.
Well, that's how the Sikha started. Look at the Sikha.
Yeah,
The Chazan the Shuls. That's how.
Zaidy's brother Reb Rebbe was involved with that.
And that's why the Rebbe started to be Magia the Sikhs for this project.
They told Rabbi Chadakov it's Puch Nefesh, a famous story. But yeah, that's how things really started. So Zaidy was, like you mentioned, his Askanis really started in the first moments of when he arrived in America. He attached himself heart and soul to the Rebbe and the Rebbe's causes. And that was his mahalich till his last breath.
So, when did he get married?
He got married on Zayin Nisan Tafshin Yadalid, 1954.
And the Rebbe was Masada Kedushin.
The Rebbe was Masada Kedushin. It was actually the first chasana at 770. That was the first chasana the Rebbe stopped. The chasana before, the Rebbe stopped traveling to chasanas
The
for
wedding
Kabbal's
balls.
Panim. Yeah. And Zaidy's chasana was the very first to take place in Crown Heights. It took place with the Kalos today in the Farban building. Later it was called the Faratza building, which Tzach purchased. But you see the roots already a few years earlier. It's actually a year or so before Tzach was Siasid in the Tafshin Tezvav. We got too soon. But this is in Yedalid. His chasana was upstairs and the Farban. And on the way home, the Rebbe, instead of taking, the Rebbe then lived on New York and Brooklyn in the Parham building there. 346 New York Avenue. So the Rebbe took Kingston that night instead, and when he passed through the Farban building, the Rebbe made with his hand to the Mishtatim of the Chasana. They all went to the window. Zayd, of course, also, and that was the Rebbe asked Beryl Yunik that night, is my mother there? Is my wife there? And she said, yeah. She said that Rebbe Tzachana was there. The Rebbe Tzachana wasn't. But the Rebbe wanted to know how she came, who she going back with. This is only 2 blocks away this is Union to the President, a block away. But the Rebbe wanted to know how his mother got there, how she's going to get back, which is something I didn't even get to yet about his relationship with Rebbe Tzachana in America.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so Rebbe Tzachana, of course, arrived in Tafshin Zayin, 3 years before my Zayda came. But from when my Zayda came in Tafshin Yud, he started reconnecting with the Rebbetzin again. They, of course, knew each other from, 6 years before that. In Pucking. But the Rebbe told him, he encouraged him to visit her, but he told him not to mention the period of Amata, because it's going to be great in Agabus Nefesh, and that's one thing, of course, we know how careful the Rebbe was in regards to his mother.
He didn't want your grandfather to talk
from that
to
period
the about that tkufa, about that period.
Ad K'dei Kach, the Rebbe never asked his mother what time the Histalkas happened. It was a shikul suffix if it was Chaf or Chaf Aleph. No, the Rebbe always marked Chaf from Tafshin Dalet, of course, until that point. But the Rebbe never was Kaviyach, never sure if it was Chaf or Chaf Aleph. So he never. How do we know this? Because when Yaakov Yosef came he came for Tishri Tezayin. So when he entered Yechidus on Erev Shoshana Tezvav, the Rebbe asked him what time the Histalkus was. And Yaakov Yosef was able to tell him based the candle was still lighting. It was Tafshin Chaf. It was on Chaf Av, and the thing that Rebbe even told him that I never asked my mother because I didn't want to be Geirim Agabus Nefesh. Such an important factor. Ad K'dei Kach. So he would visit her pretty often, and I heard from Rabbi Krinsky that the Rebbe one time told his mother, if she ever needs anything, she can always ask 3 people. himself, Rabbi Krinsky, Beryl Yunik, and Zaidy. The Kachava, those were the three, I'm saying from the men, they were the three closest to the Rebbe Tzachana. I'm saying any physical help, assistance that she ever needed, the three, they were always. And Zaidy was there pretty often. He visited her pretty often, lay Megillah for her every year. And she would host a Fabringen, I think, twice a year on Simchas Torah and Chafav. She would drop in a few times also. And Zaidy was the one that would arrange that. And many interesting encounters and interactions during those visits. Interesting conversations.
For example?
I know, for example, she would write letters. Her and Yaakov Yosef had a correspondence going on. Many of the letters were already printed. And one of the letters that she wrote to Rabbi Yaakov Yosef was, Mizman Lizman, I see your two children, David and Leib, Zayda and his brother Label. In Knei Nahara, she's very impressed from their Hanhaga. And, she wants to update the father, how their kids are doing. And when it came to B'dikas Chametz, they helped her then also. The Rebbe one time came in while they were visiting her, and they hid in the closet or they just backed out of the house. They went to give them the privacy, and the Rebbe said, "Du hast hat chosh v'gast." So I think this one Yaakov Yosef visited actually. So
your grandfather was there with his father, and the Rebbe said you have chashuv guests. Okay.
This was this at Rosh Hashanah Tezvav. What else? I mean, there was a lot. There was a lot of interesting. She one time wrote to Rabbi Yaakov Yosef that it was Chedesh Av. I think it was Tafshan Chai or so. Whenever it comes Chedesh Av, I think about those who were with us in that in those times, and just showered him with brachas for him and his children. It was a great schos they had, and it's a schos that we don't take lightly in the family.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your grandparents got married, and so he stayed in New York because did Rebbe give him a position in the yeshiva? Like, what happened then?
So he was already working in the yeshiva as a mashgiach and learning with Bachrim from, I would already say from Yud Gimel or so, maybe even earlier. Not in the official capacity as a Chaver Hanhala. That was only later after the whole episode in Tevis Yud Zayin. The Rebbe said, "Ich will have a minor mention Hanhala," but he was a younger man. Him, Rabbi Shalom Razov, they were helping out just with the Bachrim when it came to Hashkacha, when it came to assisting the Bachrim in learning, making chavrusas, and all that. They were like the Ruach HaChaim of the yeshiva. This was and then I think he asked the Rebbe later on before his chasna, after the chasna, if he should continue, and the Rebbe encouraged him to continue his work in the yeshiva. And at a year or so later, that's when his work in Tzach began, which took on a whole new chapter in his life.
So talk about Tzach. What is Tzach?
So on Shabbos Mevarchim,
Zaidy Agudas Chabad.
Yeah.
The Bavitch Youth Organization.
Correct. So on Shabbos Mevarchim,
I remember on Mevtzayim once.
Mm-hmm.
We used to give out pamphlets, I don't know, L'chaim, whatever, the Bavitch Youth Organization. And we gave a woman one of the brochures, and it had like an advertisement for like an event. And we told her you could come to the event. So she looks at it, she reads Lubavitch Youth Organization. She says, I wouldn't call myself exactly youth. But the
Rebbe actually addresses that. Youth not only in age, but also in knowledge.
Right.
Knowledge.
About Tzach or B'chal, that's something that the Rebbe said a lot.
I think b'yachas tzach, if I'm not mistaken.
So, okay, so what is Tzach? What happened? How did Rebbe start it?
So on Shabbos Mevarchim Ir, Tavshin Tez Vav, it's the end of Nisan, Tavshin Tez Vav, at the end of the Fabringen, the Rebbe ended the Fabringen by saying there is a organization in Eretz Yisrael by the name of Tzira Gudus Chabad, and spoke about the work that they do, spreading
Right, and Rabbi
Yiddishkeit.
Gansberg from Toronto spoke about it when I interviewed him. That there was a Gudus Chabad, and then the Rebbe made Tzira Gudus Chabad, which are the younger younger
Yeah.
Chassidim, that the Rebbe tasked them with various Pa'ulos in Eretz Yisrael. And I guess
Mhm.
there was success, and the Rebbe then spoke about, we're going to do the same thing here in America.
Interesting.
I'm paraphrasing from memory what he said, but something along those lines.
Yeah, so the Rebbe says in that Sikha that they're doing the work that they do, and that the Rebbe said it's a pella that for some reason it's not being done here yet. So he asked that it should be that a mosque should be established here with the same name, and not that it should just be another stationary letterhead, but it actually should be an active organization with pu'ulas, spreading Yiddishkeit, Chassidus, Yadus, Yonus, and this is Mamish at the end of the Fabringen. That Mitzvah Shabbos, Zaidy and his Chaverim organized a meeting. This was actually it was specific down in Eastern Parkway. So that's where the meeting was, just a historic fact. Moshe Pesach Goldman was describing it to me. So a lot of, younger light that were Pesach and Yonim that cared for the Rebbe's causes participated in this meeting. Who should serve, as director, who should, how to split up the different various tasks, tafkidim. And at that meeting, Rabbi Goldman, Rabbi Pesach Goldman, who just passed away recently, a year or so ago, he was chosen to be the masker, and Zaidy was chosen to be the manal, just the person to get it running, to keep it running.
So that the original board of Tzach was created then also, Zilla Katzman and Eshke
So
Gansberg.
a lot of people moved out. Beryl Baumgarten was extremely involved in the early stages of Tzach, later moved to Argentina. Rebbe was a chavit. There was a lot of, you have to see the early documents of those meetings. Later on, it became more of a official vad. But then it was whoever was willing to, contribute time and, effort into making this cause, up and established. Everyone was more than welcome to join. There was no official vad or anything like that. That's how everything started. It was a grassroots effort. Anyone that cared for, the Rebbe's call and whatever it was that he expected from Chassidim were invited to participate. And it's very interesting, actually. A few people who wrote to the Rebbe about shlichus, I know, for example, Reb Gansberg, who was a Yidid Nefesh on my Zayda for many, many years. And Rebbe Yonik was also a Yidid Nefesh on my grandfather. Both of them, they both wrote to the Rebbe about potentially moving on shlichus. And the Rebbe said the shlichus is here in Tzir Gudus Chabad, and the wives would get involved with Nishem Reis Chabad. It's interesting, Nishem Reis Chabad was the first Mesid. I think that Rebbe was Miyasid B'Chalal. And then the Tzir Gudus Chabad in America, I think, was the first. So it's interesting. Rebbe Tzachana actually had a very, very strong chavivus to Tzach. She wanted to know what was going on, the activities. Rebbe Levsky, who served as the first Menal of Tzach, Tavshin Chav Beis, he opened up the first Tzach office. So on the first day of his employment, my grandfather took him to Rebbe Tzachana. He already knew Rebbe Tzachana before, and his wife was very close with her. She's actually a cousin as well. She's a Kazan. Her father, Reb Zalman Kazan, my Zayder, first cousins. So Rebbe Tzachana was very impressed about this, and she wanted to know how, she would have wanted to be updated on all the activities. And Rebbe would bring her the reports from Tzach, the Duches, and she would have a lot of nachas. That was her son. That was the Rebbe's meisid, and the other meises, were the Rebbe was of course running Merkis and Machne and Kahas, but Tzach was the first meisid that Rebbe himself established.
Right, and Tzach became the vehicle for any. I mean, shlichus was being done through Merkez and Chinuch, but any new initiative that the Rebbe over the years would launch, the Mivtzayim or any of the the Pegisha, or all of these things that were happening, that were new, they were all being launched under the banner of Tzach.
Yeah, already from one of the first big pulas of Tzach was the Cholamei Tzukis, what was called the Idus HaYilomis, the Tzach convention on Cholamei Tzukis, where representatives, guests that were coming from around the world to spend Tisha with the Rebbe, they would report about the pulas of Tzach and their in the locations where they're from, from Eretz Yisrael, from Australia, all around America, from Canada, you name it, and everyone would talk about what are they doing in the tchum of Hafetza, which was under the umbrella of Tzach. For the first, the idea was the Rebbe's idea actually to make a convention where people could report. This is before the Knesset Shluchim, of course. This is Tavshin Yud Zayin was the first one. This is 1956, and the Rebbe told. Rabbi Chadakov told Rabbi Goldman and Zaidy then that the Rebbe told him that be'emes habe chaling gedaf kommen. The Rebbe himself would really have to participate in this convention. Aber Mitzat Sibus, he's sending Rabbi Chadakov as his shliach, and for the rest of his life, Rabbi Chadakov would address Chassidim twice a year, on Beis Ear and on Cholamei Tzukis, the two events of
two Tzach events.
And then of course later on the Kinnis, but throughout all the years, that was the you just see the Chavivus that Rebbe had to Tzach was in the Shire. Yudaf Nissen Chabeis was 60 years of the Rebbe's Yimoledus. Tzach then made a big shturim. It was called Keren Hashishim. I think the Rebbe himself named it. And when money came in numbers of 60, the Rebbe one time wrote Shaykh the Keren Hashishim, which was a huge breakthrough because they weren't sure how Yudaf Nissen should be marked. The Rebbe never verbringt it then in Yudaf Nissen, and he wouldn't verbring for another 10 years till Lamed Beis. So I think Rebbe Leibelevsky led those efforts, and it was still or hate. The idea came up.
Sensitive.
Yeah, the idea came up. Basically, every Mitzvah Shabbos Mevarchim Tzach would have a Malam Malka, where the community would come and everyone would pitch their ideas and how to continue the work, and what needs were, what things, what was necessary steps to take, etc. Anyways, when it came close to Yudaf Nissen Chav, so they were taking the steps very slow. How the Rebbe would react. They were getting Chassidim to learn in amounts of 60 minutes, 60 hours, sending money in the amounts of 60 to the Rebbe. And then finally, the letter arrived 770, addressed to for this initiative, and the Rebbe wrote Shaykh the Keren Hashishim. And the Simcha then is Shein the Shire, how excited Chassidim were that the Rebbe was actually accepting their matana.
Mm-hmm.
And B'derech HaTeva, the Rebbe verbringt them because of the Seder of Chassidim. Which was a big breakthrough. That was the early stages of Tzach, and the Pekishas, like you mentioned earlier. That was the start of then. Chav Beis, Chav Gimel, Chav Daled, 62, 63, 64, when college students. One of the big initiatives for Tzach was sending Bachrim and Younger Light to communities and campuses for Shabbosim. You need to remember then that there were no shluchim. So, let's say you wanted a place in in a community in Maryland or New Jersey, wherever it is, somewhere on the East Coast, who want to experience a Shabbos or a campus throughout America, who want to experience what Shabbos is. So Tzach would either reach out to them or they would reach out to Tzach, and they would send a couple there for Shabbos, for Yom Tov. I know Sean Belipsker of Bal Harbor and his wife would often participate on these Shabbatons. And
right,
a lot of people.
There's a lot of, the whole Begisha started from that, I think, because Reb Shmulu and...
that's how they found Yaakov Hanukkah on Penn University in Chabez.
Right.
Rebbe Bachar went to spend Shabbos there, and they brought him back, and I think he asked, why don't we do this on a larger scale or something like that? And, Begisha became what it was. Not just Begisha. For example, this Shabbos you have Seating, and with thousands of...
So that was the beginning of Chabad on campus.
This was the first time groups are coming to New York, and it was a huge breakthrough.
Right.
Just to connect Yidden with the Rebbe.
So throughout this time, your grandfather becomes, since he's the Manal, he's the one writing to the Rebbe, and getting the answers and the heroes from the Rebbe and everything that Tzach is doing.
Everything. Tzach would send out Mechtavim Klonim, general letters to the Lubavitch community, and the Rebbe was magir every one of them. At least till the Midlamids. I saw a letter in Mem Zayin that the Rebbe was magir, full of agais, but I think even throughout all the years, but in the early stages, the Rebbe was magir every single letter that went out Shem Tzach. It said on the stationery, the letterhead, Tachas and Esiyas of the Rebbe. So it was, everything that went out was really, on the Rebbe's achrayis. What Tzach was money from Chassidim then, what was the thing to get involved with. They did it very often, before every Yom Tov, before every Yom Tov, or many Yom Tov, to get a Nash involved with the Rebbe's Inyanim, that it should be a Leva de Kazach.
And anything that was happening then, Talucha was a Tzach endeavor, and every time the Rebbe launched the Mitzvah, right? Your grandfather's always getting the Mezainis.
Yeah, so Tzach was the address to every time the Rebbe spoke about something out of Fabringen. Tzach was the address to go to.
To implement it,
yeah. They would give resources.
So every time the Rebbe launches something, your grandfather goes to the Rebbe gives them the Mezainis, for the mashke, for that pula. So it's always anything that the Rebbe
sometimes, yes. It's interesting, people told me that sometimes the Rebbe would talk about a certain thing, then after the Sicha, the Rebbe would turn to his left. That's what my Zaidy's place was, to the Rebbe's left for all the years. And it was almost like an automatic, thing, a gesture, if you can say that. Because whatever, either he was the one that, he really took the Rebbe's Inyan very seriously, and that the Rebbe trusted him to get it done. And he had his unique way of doing things, But at the end of the day, this was very trusted. And I heard from a lot of people that they didn't like the fact that, his position of power and, how he was the one that got the Zaynus and the Mashkin. He was the one that was in charge of implementing the Rebbe's causes. But they told me that later on in life, I heard this from multiple people, they started appreciating who he was. That, everyone knows what it entails to put together a program, to publish something, to fundraise for something, to get... And he was willing to do that for every single pula. And the Rebbe said, so how many people came to Fabringen? Everyone who wanted to Fabringen. It wasn't that no one was interested. This was part of life. This is how the Rebbe would always end Fabringens, and the Zaidy would take a bottle of mashke and make a Fabringen that night or the next night. I organize everything in my Zaidy's archives according to topics. There are many documents. I'm not even sure what topic is under. Hayim histarti sadarti hisvadus. Today I organize a Fabringen. According to the Rebbe's instruction.
These are duchas to the Rebbe.
Yeah. And this amount of people were in Shtatif, and I hope it was Geir Nachzurach. Which organization is that? he wanted to implement what the Rebbe says, so he wrote in that he. So this was his. Was how he operated. Everything, his whole life, just consisted on just, this was his fuel. This was his energy. Just whatever the Rebbe wanted was the Rebbe's kach was his kach.
And what you're describing is like, maybe if it makes sense, if it's a bacher that has that, enthusiasm and ibergigebenkeit, that we can understand. But he's a person that has responsibilities and he's married. And I understand also that there was many hardships, personal hardships that he had. And as Amphipicane, he was, so ibergigeben. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
So another main reason why he's so respected, in my opinion, is because people who knew him up and close, his personal situation, knew that his entire life, literally his whole life, was he endured imaginable hardships, personal hardships. A number of his family members dealt with health issues, which he was constantly involved in dealing with, doctor's appointments, etc. And the Rebbe was very, very aware of it. He would update the Rebbe on everything. One of his daughters, who wasn't well, passed away a few years after he passed away. All the Bachram knew who she was. She showed up to Zal, and the Bachram told me that when she would make a fuss, he wouldn't lose himself. If he was talking to a Bacher, his place was always by the bima in Zal. He would have his hands on top of the bima, call it a Bachram, or about Seder, about Shidduchim. Zaidy was always dealing with another matter. We can talk about that soon, how he dealt with Tzach and Yeshiva, how he juggled the two. But he excused himself from the Bachram and dealt with it. If it was an issue in the Chotzer, if something, whatever it was. And these are Zaydas and Alta Zaydas telling me that as they got older and they're dealing with their own, issues, whatever it was. It remains such a strong reishim on them, how level-headed he was in dealing with these issues, of not losing himself, holding his composure in the sense that this is my life, I need to deal with this. He wasn't embarrassed, he wasn't ashamed. Obviously it was very uncomfortable for him to deal with these things, but especially in a public setting. But he dealt with it very maturely and very fatherly, and people recognized that. And it really, really had a strong reisham.
Right, and a number of his kids passed away during his lifetime.
Yeah, he had 6 children. 4 passed away, 3 in his lifetime. And yeah, it was. You can just imagine what kind of life that is, and his public life on the side, or not on the side, but literally on the same, same period. It's actually amazing to see how, in the midst of big polos in Lubavitch, I'm talking about when tanks were taking off for the first time, Tammuz Lamed Daled, updating the Rebbe about different destinations where Bachram were going, how many tanks getting minus nonstop. The same exact day, he wrote dates on every letter. So the same day, he was also reporting about how he was dealing with doctors and appointments, etc., for family members, and it really hit me then how amazing this man is. Of that, it wasn't like often when a person is dealing with something, his whole life is on pause. He can't deal with anything else. Right. This is the same day he was reporting about what we gave him nachas ruach to the Rebbe. It wasn't a stira. It was happening at the same time, and it's a very strong nekuda.
It's amazing. Nicht jeden gedacht, but I recall once having, for a few weeks, I had to deal with something personally with one of my children, a health matter. Baruch Hashem, everything is okay. But I remember that during that small period, it's like your life is on pause. And for me, that was my experience. And to hear about somebody that was able to carry that, for life. And yet, what does the Rebbe write about Reb Dovid? Is meretz l'asiyah b'peil. That's what the Rebbe wrote. He's all about the asiyah b'peil. Like, to juggle all of that is
That's outstanding, yeah.
Did he ever speak about it to anyone?
No. I'm sure he had his very close chavedim, Zalek Katzman, Olav Shalom, Rabbi Yonah, Keska Gansberg.
I don't mean like talking like...
No, they knew what he was doing.
So did he ever like in a way of when he was talking to people about how to conduct themselves, speak about his own experience?
There's one story I saw that they printed the family of Rabbi Yoskel Volmovsky, Olav Shalom, printed a booklet of stories that he would say and the memories of him. And they write there that he was once dealing with a certain issue. He was the cook in 1414 for many years, big schos. And for many years, he at a certain point, he had enough of the work. He was dealing with a certain issue there. Anyways, so he told Zaidy, who was the Menal Yeshiva, that he's done. And to find someone else to replace him. So they write there, Zaidy took him out. This was in Zaidy's office in 770, right down the hallway from the Rebbe's office in Maskiris. So he calls him out to the Chatzir and tells him, "Guck in meine Augen, look in my eyes. Zu my Yisurim kommst du nicht nannt. To my hardships, you don't come close, whatever it is, however you translate that. We have to do the work. Life's not easy. It's not gonna be a easy ride, but he described to him what his job and the importance of his job and how he has to continue. And he writes that gave him tremendous chizuk to continue. Until his last day, Mamish, he was ibergigebenkeit to the physical needs of the Bachrim, the food. He prepared all the meals. Yeah. But yeah, talk about the physical needs of the Bachrim, physical needs. My Zayda was always very on top of getting the Bachrim the medical care that they needed, and getting them the doctor's appointments and making sure they get, if they were sick in the dorm. I know personally, if you guys told me how he would deliver chicken soup to them, and how they're doing, and find out how they're doing and all that. And he really cared for Bachrim. He really, really cared about the Bachur's Gashmis. And another thing that people often describe to me is that he really knew how to read a Bachur. He's not known for his scholarly accomplishments. That wasn't his tchum. Which one of the reasons why I think that Rebbe wanted him to be a Menal Yeshiva, he knew how to read a Bachur very well. He knew what it means not to be too hard on yourself. He knew what it means, what a Bach was shaykh to. He knew how to delegate positions if it was something that a Bach was needed for in a different department, which was another interesting trait that he had. Trait that he had was he knew who would be good for what. And since he was a man of many hats, he was able to use one guy for one ma'aseh to help with another. And because you worked with that, maybe you can now work with that. He was a center figure of many of the organizations, so he was able to work it out that way, navigate the ma'aseh, and a lot to talk about on that.
And I'm just going back to his personal hardships that, ultimately also he himself, the last long period of his life, he was very unwell. Parkinson's, he suffered a lot, tremendously, himself personally, not only with his family members.
So the summer of 1984, Tafshim Daled, he was diagnosed with a type of yanamachla on his skin, on his foot, and he had a number of operations to deal with that. There's a lot of duches and a lot of answers. from that period. Every single thing that the doctor told him, he asked them to. And how do I know this? Because I have all these papers. Dear Rabbi Schneerson, on the doctor's letterhead, updating the Rebbe with his condition. Rabbi Raskin came to the office today, and then we're thinking about doing this procedure and this treatment. He wanted every single thing to be written to the Rebbe, and he, of course, brought it in right at the first opportunity. A lot of answers to which doctor to use, and a lot of askelations from that to Kufim. Many brachas at the verbringen of Pinchas Memdalid. The Rebbe said, "Steht da atomim mit alle meiles von atomim," and he's worried about a mezed apampanim. It is verzarget nege operatia, whatever it is, nituach. There's no reason to be.
He's worried about the Rebbe.
He's worried about an operation. Yeah, and that's like what he was going through then. And the Rebbe said, "There's no reason, especially since it was already done and it was about stocho." We're at was mincha time. There's no need to look this way, and especially on Shabbos, especially in such a holy time like now. And it was just a very powerful statement. There were a few times throughout the years that the Rebbe testified on his character.
Yeah, can you mention some of them? The one I mentioned about Meretz Asiyah B'Peil, maybe talk about that.
First thing that I can remember is Rebbe told me it was Simchas Torah Tafshin Yud Aleph, and I think the Rebbe was speaking then very bisrakshus about those who were asking him to be Mekabel Nesias. This is a few months before the Rebbe was Mekabel Nesias, and it was a very hard to get sicha. My Zaidy was crying a lot, so people were shushing him he was shas the sicha. So the Rebbe noticed this and said, "It is kedem nicht mevavel, mer is nicht mevavel, yeah, und es nur a shod as is mevavel sich allein." He has this a few times to me. He's not disturbing anyone. Me, he's not disturbing, and it's only a shod that he's disturbing himself. Whatever, that could have a lot of meanings. And another time, Mezed was once blocking somebody out of Hebringen. I heard this from someone who was there, and the Chassid said, "David, du verstellst." And either he repeated it a few times, whatever. The Rebbe overheard this. It wasn't too far. It was only a few feet away from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, "David verstellt nicht." David doesn't block. And then
I remember me and you together did an interview for the Deher, I believe, with Rabbi Garari in Detroit, and he had a whole thesis on this vart that the Rebbe said, that David verstellt nicht, that David doesn't block.
Right.
And Rabbi Garari was explaining the way he knows how to, I think a 25-minute explanation, that there's different types of bittul. There's a bittul, but you're still a yesh, and then there's Eved Neman, there's Eved Pashat, there's all these things, and the highest level of bittul is David verstellt nicht, that the whole mitzvah of David was that he was so given over to the Rebbe that he's not even a mitzias. He cannot be a mitzias that is blocking. He's totally bottled to the Rebbe. He was going on about that.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the Inyan of Eved. In addition to the title about the David, Rebbe would often speak about when he would talk about him, that you have to remember who he was in his mahos. Zaidy was a Talmud Reb Nissen. He was educated by him. That was the real first proper chinuch Zaidy got under Amashbia's influence, was Reb Nissen Nemenov. And Reb Nissen's koch was, of course, in Yanim of Kabbalas El, Iskafia, and Daven Bariches, and all of that, these Spaniards before davening. And Rebbe would say what touched him very much, what he noticed, that Zaidy was able to channel that Aveda of Kabbalas El, and, wegstellen sich auf den Zeit, Hanachas Atzmusei, and to channel that for the Rebbe's in Yanim. to carry them out without asking any questions. To it's not if we can do it, it's how we can do it. That's how my grandfather operated.
He was doing the ufaratsta with
yeah.
kabasel.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. Well, very well said. So that was. That's a pretty good agdara. Rebbe was good at that. That'd be magda somebody, but.
So what else?
Agav, he would be masking every single year that I would ask Rebbe to bring for his yahrzeit on Zayin ear, without fail. Every year he would be masking. Anytime I asked him, which was very rare. He would walk from his house next to 770 all the way down to this happened at least 3 times, and then there was other locations to Levi's library. But I don't think he did. I don't think anyone ever asked him to bring for their grandfather's yahrzeit, but he felt a certain chavivus to him. He had 2 different ways of operating. No 2 minds are the same, especially in that caliber. But yeah, he had a tremendous respect. There was mutual respect. Both of them respect one another very, very much. I was told by Mendy Groner, Rebbe Groner's son, that after the Tukufa of Alamed Ches, my grandfather was appointed by the Rebbe, together with Rebbe and 2 others, Zam Gerari and Misha Pinchas Katz, to serve as the Vada Masader. Those who were involved in organizing the structure in 770, the Seder, how it was by the Tfilos and by the Fabringans, all that. Anyways, so after Lamed Ches, Rabbi Groner was telling me he was once in my Zayda's office while the Rabbi and my grandfather were going at it about if they should allow people to stand behind the Rebbe by Fabringans. Because back in the day, there were windows behind the Rebbe's place by his Fabringans, and to allow luften, fresh air in, people wouldn't be able to stand there. So Rebbe would say, B'shum Eifim, people can stand there in order to allow air to come in. And my Zayda was saying, Adarabba, that the Rebbe wants more people to be there, and everything's going to continue now. Heisafa, v'chulu. Kidua, when the Rebbe was not happy with people who wouldn't show up by Keshe Bracha, v'chulu.
Or stop people from
Stop
going.
people.
Yeah.
The Shaitim, there was
Tipshim, I think.
Tipshim, there were very strong Shainis about that. The Rebbe wanted everything to continue, and not just continue, but thrive, v'chulu, as it's known. But, so finally, my Zayda tells him, just as the Rebbe gave you the keich of Chazara, or just as you were given the keich of Chazara, I was given the keich of Vada Masader. And that had a very strong reisham on Groner. He saw, obviously Reb Yale, there's no one to compare it to him. His Ga'inus is, but how my Zayda saw, though, Taki, you have the keich of Chazara, and no one's gonna even compete with you. But the Rebbe gave me the keich of Vada Masader, and therefore, and Rebbe accepted that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few differences between them. Rebbe didn't want a lot of people showing up at one place in Talucha, and my Zayda said Adrabah, the Rebbe wants more people.
I think Rebbe had an opinion strategically that it's not good to have the whole Lubavitch landing in one place. Okay.
Or multiple people. Maybe Rebbe only wanted 2 people to show, and that's how it was. He was a bacher, 2 bachim would show up, not more than 2, whatever it was. But there was, there were multiple differences in opinion on many matters in how yeshiva should be run, and how different pulas should be done. But the 2 of them had a very deep mutual respect for each other. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other things that the Rebbe said about your Zayda?
On Zayin of Tavshim Memhei, a month or so after the Rebbe first spoke about the Svarim on Yibis Tammuz, the Rebbe appointed 4 new members to Agoch. to replace those who passed away. Zaidy was from the four. The Rebbe wrote his name then. And next to, for each member that was added, the Rebbe wrote like a quality about them.
Like a reason why they're being added.
Yeah. So for his name, the Rebbe wrote Meretz Lasi B'Peil. He's energetic to get the job done. And with those three words, I think the Rebbe was really, Magder, his personality, very well. That's who he was. He was full of energy, and he didn't stop until the job was done.
Right. And I think what I remember discussing in that phone call that we had was that it wasn't necessarily, he wasn't like building infrastructure and a 5-year plan and, building he wasn't a CEO. He was Meretz Asiyah B'Peil. He was the one that will actually just do and get it done.
Yeah. So there were complaints that Rebbe about why was he given the power and all the meistas. Sai to be the yeshiva reish of Tzach, and Sai to be the menal of yeshiva, and Sai this and Sai that. And I know there was someone who spoke to the Rebbe about having someone replace him as the menal of yeshiva. And the Rebbe told him, he's mine. And then the Rebbe said also, who are you going to find to replace that? I think the Rebbe knew what the Yeshiva 770, what it entails to run a yeshiva, especially this sort of 770. But yeah, and when it came to that, and then when it came to Tzach also, some people felt that he wasn't the most qualified candidate for that. And my grandfather actually wrote to the Rebbe, I have answers if he should continue in yeshiva. And he got positive answers to continue. And he wrote to the Rebbe that he wasn't sure he should take on Tzach because he was already very involved with yeshiva, Tafshin Tezvav. And the Rebbe, he writes this to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe told me to take on the position of Tzach. There's a lot of details in that as well. But and also on Sukkot Tafshin Beis, one of the things that the Rebbe asked my Zaidy to do was to bind his Abra Minim on Sukkot.
When?
To bind the Abra Minim.
So you said a year?
To Tafshin Beis.
Tafshin Nun Beis?
Nun Beis.
Mm-hmm.
So after my Zaidy gave back the Al Minim to the Rebbe.
Right, because Zaidy was the one every year that would make the lulav for the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, right?
And the Rebbetzin and Rebbetzin Chana. But so when he gave the Rebbe the Dal Minim, after he put them together, the Rebbe told him, hieß doch David, und David ist doch Shaykh to David Malka Mashiach. Your name is David, and David is connected to Mashiach. Mashiach ben David, of course. But I heard this from a relative of mine who my Zayda told us to, but he didn't want to make a rash from Pearson from it. But in general, that Tishrei, there were a lot of interesting, expressions that Rebbe told a few Chassidim. I think that Rebbe told his brother Label then that we're after 40 years now, and at 40 years, call in Nishadai Rabbi, and things like that to various Chassidim. This is the last Tishrei. I think then Muhammad Shoshana, the Rebbe said about Rabbi Yale, is Dach the Chazer, yeah? Turned to labor is Dach the Chazer. I think it was the first time. Not the first time, but the Rebbe used that term.
About Rabbi Yale.
There were a few things in there that I heard from other people as well, which was very Himmeldik. And so those are a few expressions that I think of right now. I'm sure there are more that the Rebbe said about him or to him. He was also a very big known Shatchin in Lubavitch. He made many Shidduchim, and there were many people that the Rebbe referred to him. To even Shidduchim that the Rebbe was Matzia, he wanted my Zayda to close or to be involved with.
And the Rebbe wanted Hanhala to be involved with Shidduchim. You know, Reb Shleim Zarchi also got answers from the Rebbe about Shidduchim.
Yeah.
What is the story? Your mother had an accident, a car accident. Right? What was that story?
You have enough tape for this?
We'll try.
It's a very long arichis. I actually had the schus of interviewing the doctor that was involved with treating her a few years ago when the Kinnis had the famous Zoom that went on for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So there was about 1,000 shluchim on when I contacted the Kunyans to reach out to him. They're a relative of this Dr. Richter, which we'll talk about in a second.
It's the same Dr. Richter that was there, Lamed Ches?
Yeah, he was the first one to respond to Lamed Ches. So yeah, I was. It was very heartsick when he asked me, "This your son?" Like, I don't think he realized there was a hemshech of it. So I was like, "Yeah." It was a very heartsick moment. So I'll try to say it as best as possible in the time that we have together.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim, as a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying their hair club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Herr Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
So this was Adar Aleph Tavshin Lamed Gimel. My mother then was a student at Beis Rivka in 9th grade. Beis Rivka then was located on Stone Avenue near church. A street Rabbi Chadaka would refer to as Yenegas. She was 13 years old at the time when she was leaving school one day around 4 o'clock. As she was crossing the street, a zooming either truck or a van drove by and hit her. Hit her hard. She flew in the air a few feet, landed, I think, on her head. It was a terrible, terrible scene. This was in front of all the girls. This was by dismissal. She was rushed then to Kings County Hospital, right here. And she was unconscious. When my Repinchas Kunyan, who was a principal of Beis Rivka then, contacted my grandfather and told him what happened. And a grandfather right away ran to 770 or went to Maskeris, who's probably in 770 already. And he told Label what happened, the Label Groner, and the Label told him to write to the Rebbe right away all the details, and he'll bring it in as soon as he can. So he wrote all the details, and that the doctors don't give her much time. They already saw her condition right away, that her condition was almost done. And so Rebbe Gordon told me that Zaidy wrote into his pan then that he's giving her over as a daughter to the Rebbe. It's a story I always heard growing up, but hearing that from someone that was there really had to hit me hard. And he wrote to the Rebbe very, very hard to get pan, that the doctors are not giving her much hope, and that he's giving her over to the Rebbe entirely. Anyways, the Rebbe then, when Rebbe Label went in, the Rebbe told him to contact a Dr. Robert Richter, and he should treat her. I'm sorry, the Rebbe told him to call Dr. Richter and tell him that he wants to meet with him.
The Rebbe wants to meet with him?
Yeah. I heard from Mandy Groner that the Rebbe told his father that David is like ibergigebenkeit, and David is an episode for him. But that's interesting. He said, I think he remembers that detail, but which is a very fascinating thing to hear. Anyways, so Rebbe Label called Dr. Richter. He was a surgeon at Brooklyn Jewish Hospital. It's now called Interfaith, but just near Atlantic Avenue. And Dr. Richter got back to him, and he said he'll be over he'll be out at 770 very soon. He came over to 770 right away. That I was calling in the middle of the day. It's obviously a very important matter. And the Rebbe basically told him what the report that he got about my mother, and told him that he wants him to look after her for her recovery. So Dr. Richter told me that I told the Rebbe that it's not my field. What I think was brain damage, and number two, I don't belong to that hospital, so I won't work out. So the Rebbe told him that mitzad Kings County, it's done. It's over. They can't really do. They said they can't do much anymore at this point. They're just waiting for the worst. So what would they care if you come in just to look over her situation? So the Rebbe then told him, I want you to come in every day to report to me. I asked him if the Rebbe gave him any guidance on treatment. He told me no. I want you to come back every day and report, and call her name. So he did that every day for about 2 weeks. And the Rebbe told him, and also this was, I think, on a Wednesday or maybe on a Thursday. Anyways, the Rebbe said when it comes to Shabbos, and after you finish the Suda with your family, I would like you to visit the hospital and then come back to me. I'll be at my office. And he did that. He told me he kept the.
Where did he live?
I think he lived in Manhattan, but Upper East Side. But the interesting thing is, he told me when he came Friday night, he's a Shomer Shabbos, so he kept his car running because he didn't want to have to restart it afterwards. So he told me he asked some yeshiva students to watch his car. Crime then in Crown Heights, you can imagine. But then he told me that's when he really hit him that he's mamish the Rebbe shliach for her refuah, for her recovery. The fact that the Rebbe on Shabbos to see. That's when he realized basically this is not just that was working through him. He actually refused to meet with me because he didn't want to be considered a hero. I told him, my family, you're a hero. He's like, I don't want to hear any of that hero talk. I was a Rebbe shliach, making sure this girl gets a full recovery. I'm nothing more than a shliach of the Rebbe. He made that point very, emphasized that point very strongly. Anyways.
His relationship with the Rebbe started in Lamed Ches? You don't know.
I actually saw on Rebbe Responsa a letter to him, I think from earlier, even from the Chavs.
He had a relationship, okay.
He's married to Mendel Kunyan's granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, so this relationship started much earlier. Long story short, which is many details, there are many letters in between, Yechidus, but on Purim Day...
Why making it short? He had Yechidus? Your grandfather went to Yechidus in the middle of the
by Shabbos Abringens, the Rebbe, he approached the Rebbe once, and the Rebbe said, you shouldn't ask for a bracha again until she comes home. On Purim, so this happened on Tes Adar. On maybe it was Adar Sheni Mistama then. On Purim, a week later, Reb Shimshon Stock, who was a close family friend, lived in the same block as my grandfather and my mother, of course. He decided to arrange for a minyan to ask the Rebbe for a bracha for her. She was still in a coma then. So I heard this from Shnei Mizrachi. He was one of the part of the minyan. Actually, I have the duch right over here, the pan that they gave the Rebbe then. It was 3 kehanim. Shimshon wanted himself, Zalda Katzman, and Shnei Mizrachi, and another 7-8 friends of my grandfather, who after Mincha on Purim Day, this is Purim Tavshalam Gimel, they approached it. They were first standing by the door when the Rebbe left his room to the Zal for Mincha. The Rebbe didn't mention anything. On the way back, the Rebbe asked the label groaner, "Was stehen Sie da? What are they standing here for?" So label answered the Rebbe that you come bet na bracha for Reb Dovid's Tochter. They're here to ask the bracha for my mother. So at that point, they presented to the Rebbe the pan with all the signatures, together with ayin-based shkolim. It was connected. It was corresponding to the Rebbe's years then, 72. And for the main pan, and they wrote in the pan that us, the undersigned, were asking the Rebbe bracha for our friend Reb Dovid, that he should have atzlacha, whatever it is, all the meistis and all the responsibilities that he has in yeshiva and in tzach and madam sader, especially now that he has the situation that his daughter's in, that the doctors say that it's biyad Hashem, in God's hand. They did everything they could, and now it's in God's hand. And we're asking the Rebbe on Purim, on this Purim, to they should have a for Shnei Kreva, and all the, and it shouldn't be no reisham afterwards. So the Rebbe read it. After the Rebbe read it, the Rebbe says, "Tach Purim Heinz." That the din kol apesh yad nesim lei. On the Zayin Psuris Tevis. Purim, there's a din that any person who stretches out his arm for a bracha, you grant him the bracha. Or for mice, it's literally about money, but the Rebbe says in the context of a bracha that it should be Psuris Tevis. So the following day, she opened her eyes. So Dr. Richter said that when he visited her that day, he called her eyes, and into my shock, and he's not an emotional guy, he's a surgeon, he's a real professional unorthodox guy. The Rebbe, so he got all shaken up. He told me that, he said, I got goosebumps. I did not think there was a chance that she would open her eyes, and he, as the rest of the doctors, were basically expecting the worst. And she opened her eyes, and my Zaidy said with her then Meidani. He showed her a picture of the Rebbe, asked her if she knows who that is. She said, of course, the Rebbe. during that Hotakofa, my Zayda was writing very, very hard to get. I had them here. Duches and Panim to the Rebbe on Hashem Hishirno about what he was going through besides for all this, and especially this, this tzara on his back to deal with. And there was a lot of encouraging answers, but there was continuous updates from every time Zayden visited her, which was every day. That night he would report to the Rebbe what the doctors are saying and the updates, and that there's more and more of a chance that she may wake up. There was always hope and all that. And so Dr. Richter told me that one thing that really impressed me about this ordeal was that her father, my grandfather, how he never lost himself. He said, whenever I dealt with similar cases, parents were always, losing their minds, going in a craze. My Zayda, he never lost himself at any moment. And there were times where I heard from those who were there that the doctors, was one time especially, the doctor asked him they need parental consent about giving over some of her limbs, organs to scientific research, if my Zayda would be willing to do that. And someone had to translate for him. And my Zayda said, Mishuma if not, the Rebbe says she's going to have a refuah shlema. And it's not even up for discussion. Obviously, halachically, it wouldn't even be possible, but the concept of if she's going to make it, he was, very strong about. There was no other option. And Dr. Richter said that really made a big impression on him, seeing this this mental strength that he had. And then, so later on that month, at the end of Adar, my grandfather and his wife, my grandmother, and their son, my uncle Yitzchak, went into Yechidus for my uncle's bar mitzvah, which would take place in Zionism. And I have a transcript of that Yechidus where my Zayda writes that they asked the bracha, Chava was my grandmother, Chava bigish bracha for Chamushka, my mother, for Omer Chagadash, zum Pesach, wird sie sein zum Seder. Pesach shall be at the Seder. My uncle Yitzchak.
She was already conscious then.
Yeah, she was up already. She still had a long journey for recovery, but my uncle Yitzchak also asked the bracha that she should be at his bar mitzvah. And that was the Rebbe's answer. And the whole block remembers her ambulance coming up Montgomery Street at a Pesach after Bir Chometz, and she was carried off a stretcher into the house. She was with a wheelchair. She was a walker in a wheelchair for the next few months, of course. And as the Rebbe was leaving, I saw in a doch. My Zayda wrote to the Rebbe at the end of Sivan, when the Rebbe spoke a sicha to the Messiahs then, my mother was there with her walker, and he writes to the Rebbe, as the Rebbe was leaving the shul, the Rebbe made an idud with his hand to her in her direction, and it really raised her spirits. It's interesting that my Zayda wanted to make sure that the Rebbe was aware of that. That's interesting detail of the story that I know now because he wrote that dochin. But as the Rebbe was leaving the shul, he, I guess he just made a wave with his hand to my mother, like, I acknowledge you. And, Dr. Richter told me that at the end, when he told the Rebbe that she woke up and the Rebbe told him that it won't be necessary to make his daily visits anymore, he said, I couldn't contain myself but to ask the Rebbe, did you know the entire time? So he told me the Rebbe didn't say yes or no. The Rebbe made like a twinkle with his eye. Like, I'm even Yavin. But, she lives for another 30 years. And Baruch Hashem, I'm here to tell the story.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous story, and it's a story I live with. My family lives with, and it's I wouldn't be here without it, without that bracha. Just very begashmis, and it's only mechayev, of course. But I'm sure there's so many other details that not coming to mind right now. But that's the story in a nutshell. During that Hotekufa, the girls were always visiting her and saying Tehillim at her bedside. Shimshon Stock was always bringing groups over of girls to drive over, and sometimes he would shake the bed for her to wake up, in his typical fashion. But yeah, there was that was a very traumatizing tekufa for the girls. These are 14-year-old girls that in front of their eyes they saw this. The whole recovery they weren't at ease that entire till the end of the year, till the beginning of the next. This was other, But yeah, the Rebbe takes care of his boys. Dr. Richter was very happy. I sent him the picture of him and his wife at my parents' chasana in the Malef, and he was very thankful to see that. I think in the duch of the chasana, my Zaidy mentions that he was there. In general, my Zaidy reported to the Rebbe about everything in his life. I don't know if this wouldn't necessarily true, but I can maybe be mishar that he probably has from the most answers of any chassid just from his roles that he played and how frequent he would report. For example, any time he had to leave town for whatever reason, if let's say for a chasana of a Talmud or whatever it is, he wrote to the Rebbe his entire itinerary, when he's taking off, when he's going to be back, and then he would always ask the Rebbe to be mezakeh him with the shlichus. It was like an employee reporting to his boss that he's taking off for a day or so. That was his relationship with the Rebbe. It wasn't, he didn't take off for a week. He didn't take off for an extended period of time. I'll be back at the office at this and this amount of time, this time. And it's, it really, reading these duchas really show you what it means to work for the Rebbe. Now, everyone, of course, works under the Rebbe, and, as Chassidim, we belong to the Rebbe, but to work directly under the Rebbe, that's, to see that up and close, it's fascinating to see. That's that story.
Thank you for sharing it. It's a very special story.
One thing actually I want to add, which is connected to what we spoke about earlier, about his other hardships that he was destined to face. During that Purim, I heard this from two Talmidim who were there, Rabbi Goldberg, who was today in Migdal Emek, and Rabbi Yossi Gerlitzky, who's a shliach in Tel Aviv. They were both by the Fabringen of Chassidim Fabringen, the night before Leil Purim. This is either Purim or Yom Nisan. Definitely the period when my mother was in the hospital. He was Fabringen. They both described as a very hard sick Fabringen. And he was saying, "Was he's a bacher taina hat poemen." They didn't say the lamed properly. He had a lamed.
It's not a speech impediment.
No,
it's an accent.
Yeah.
See, his brother Leib was like that also.
Yeah. So he would say, "Was he's a bacher taina hat poemen." What do you mean a bacher says he has problems? You have a Rebbe, there's no problem. Like a chassid doesn't have issues. You have a Rebbe, everything the Rebbe will take care of. There's no. And he was saying this b'israkshus, and like throughout the Fabringen, he was repeating this theme, and they all knew that he was referring to himself. He was speaking to him. No, but this was next leak that he was mamish talking to himself, in a sense like, why is it I'm doubting that she'll have a recovery? I mean, yeah. Why do I feel that there's problems? The Rebbe will take care of it. His kashas, the Rebbe was, like it says in Torah, nafshik shu benafshi. There was no. It was one thing. There was one entity, and it's something that he really tried to be mushrash in his children, his einaklach, and I hope I can embody those traits of his. That's one thing I wanted to add, which was a very, hartstikke moment.
Thank you. We can't speak about Reb Dovid Raskin without mentioning a few things. First of all, he was the Balkaira during the week by the Rebbe. So that's something that he's very known for. And also, he had a minhag to bring every year Shvi Shel Pesach. When we stay up all night, he always bring. What was that about? It's for the Talucha?
So, the first thing you asked about his laning for the Rebbe, that actually already started Tafshin Yud. I think one time the regular Bakeda wasn't there, so the Rebbe turned to him, Du kannst dich lehnen. And from then on, he started leaning. The Rebbe was then in Shas Avelus, the Fidik Rebbe, of course. So he started leaning in the Rebbe's minyan. And that Yechidus that I mentioned earlier from Tafshin Yud either was in the Beis Sivan Yechidus or the Rish Chidus Tammuz Verbringen of Tafshin Yud. The Rebbe said that leaning from the Teda is also a school for Psich Zamechen. As a bracha for Psich Zamechen. That, he should be able to process information and, learn better, etc. So the Rebbe's leaning from the Teda is a skula, which I'm sure was connected to the fact that that's what he ended up doing. He saw that as a shlichus. His mamish in late years that he was leaning in the Rebbe's room. This was in the mid-samachs. Unfortunately, he was going through many health issues then, as he did the last 15 years or so of his life. And he would have to go for treatment and many doctor appointments and, to maintain his health. And he was very careful that the appointments shouldn't be on a Monday and a Thursday. He didn't want to have that schus taken away from him to be able to lay in the Rebbe's room.
Right.
So
I remember vividly him
laying in the Rebbe's
laying
room.
in the Rebbe's room. I mean, like with the letzte keches. Like
He was mamish doing it until the end. Until the point that the people mamish near him couldn't even hear. He was. I think before I get to the Shvi Shal Pesach, these things really kept him together as a person. With all considering his life circumstances and his health issues, the fact that he was able to be memali the Rebbe's shlichus and his herois gave him chayis gashmi. The fact that Monday, Thursday he was able to call up the Rebbe, which Agav, I heard he was the first one to call up the Rebbe with that title of Adinim and Rabbeinu. In the sense, it was lower. I think it was Teda Lepel. Yechan Gordon called out the Kale, but as a Stiller hate, he was calling up the Rebbe already then in Tafshin Yud. Yameid, he would go lower than Ben Arav Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. In general, the way he did it was very royal. Yameid. It was like a and he would turn to the side in order not to have his back to the Rebbe, as the Rebbe would come from either from the upstairs in the Zal, and then Monday, Thursdays, and later on after Memches downstairs, and later on Mamush in the front of the 770. But that I think his health started deteriorating after Nimel Tammuz for that reason. Of course, he would bring about that the Rebbe is still with us, and a soldier doesn't give up his work if the general isn't, giving him orders necessarily at that moment. He would bring in this akud nonstop. But Begashmius, the Rebbe was his support system, and the fact that he knew that he's showing up every day to work in yeshiva and tzach, al-baz balkeir, al-baz masada, whatever it was, all of his tafkidim nagoch, that gave him sustenance to carry on. And as the years were going on, and Hain and Vav and Zion, his health was only declining, unfortunately. But he wasn't that old even. He was in his early 70s.
When it started?
Mid-60s even. Yeah.
Okay, and Shvi Shal Pesach?
Shvi Shal Pesach. So first, I think Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson would bring before the.
I remember him.
I
I attended one of these Februaries.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, he was, like you're describing, he was very not well.
It's one of my earliest memories of him, of sitting there by his... I didn't appreciate it, and then, of course, I just was by Zaidy's Fabring, and I didn't realize what was happening. It was Shir Pesach, like, there's nothing happening. Like this was his night.
Right.
Almost anyone that I interviewed, like I mentioned earlier, that I asked, everyone would always say, Shir Pesach al-Babish was Dovid Raskin. That was his day to shine.
I remember when he... I just remember what happened. There was when I was a young bacher, so he came in middle of the night upstairs in the zal. The oranges there.
Oranges, bananas, and wine.
Something like that. And he was bringing. It was very hard to hear anything. So afterwards he left. And then Reb Shalom Brachstadt came up. He's like, he wanted to know, did Reb Dovid Fabring? Like, is Lubavitch still going on? He said, I think it was I or someone else told him, yeah. I said, we weren't able to hear so much, but, so he I remember Shalom Brachstadt was like, I'm off like the Schrein via Leib, when like he used to scream like a lion by these Fabringas. I remember that moment.
Yes, so his main, I remember Rebbe was once saying at one of the his Yarte Fabringans that Shir Shal Pesach by Chassidim was Kriyas Yamsov, all the Hiskalus, all the things that was in the Skala then, by Be'ez Kriyas Yamsov, what Chassidus talks about, what the Rebbe talks about. But what was the Kacher of David? That Morgen darf Awa gehen Tauche. That was that's Kriyas Yamsov, that's Yiddishkeit, that's Yitz Mitzrayim, the whole thing.
Tauche.
Is, I think one of the main reasons why he's such a big Kach and Talucha, because Talucha is the only activity that we do that really shows on the concept of soldiers marching. By Zaidy's entire mahus was a soldier. The fact that there was one aspect within this whole framework of their Shvi, which literally personified that idea of walking like soldiers. I think that was one of the things that really resonated with him. Daf game tzvei, like the behemoth in English. He was very into saying daf game as when we leave Samasamdi, especially when the Rebbe was at the front door being malave all the Chassidim. He wanted the Chassidim to line up down East Parkway, tzvei as a.
And then there's a famous line. He would say, until.
Yeah, he would say that the Seder of how a Bacher would leaves the derech of Yiddishkeit. So he would say he first stops, keeping Seder. Then he stops b'chalal coming to yeshiva. Then he would enumerate a few other things. B'chal by these Sabringans, he was very very open. Everyone's heard that the Rebbe told him that to speak about things that Bacham can relate to. I heard from a nephew of his that told me that he told him once. But he was very that was his line. He started with not coming to say there, and
he goes level by level.
No, but I'm not sure if it was in the same sequence of this Torah that he would say, or was other times. Basically, he would say by a balabas, you eat by a balabas, and then he started eating good maicholim, good foods. Then you drink maim keitzim, which is soda. Maim keitzim literally means jumping water, but schwarze Wasser, Coke, or green Wasser, ginger ale, or Sprite. All these different. Elam Hazard didn't, wasn't tavis by him at all. Like he didn't.
Yeah, I heard from Shleim Mizrach. He's like, soda. He never drank it.
The whole thing. Meat wasn't. I mean, Gashmis wasn't part of his life.
He says until you go.
No, so he would talk about that all this. And
he says you go to Balabas and es go to Machalim and the Beich wachsen hat Hashem sich in the mikveh until.
Bach doesn't make him because he ate so much by the Balabas.
Until
he stops going on.
Until he stops going on Talucha. That's the cliff.
That's the most grave sin. Talucha by him was Tatum Sinai. There was no missing. I heard from somebody even after he was never in a wheelchair. They saw him on Coney Island once. Someone pushing him, going to a show. He was shocked. Like really? Like you did your time here. You can sit home. You don't have to.
No,
he was.
They say that
Yeah.
David would say he hopes it rains on Talucha
Yeah.
so that the Chassidim
It
can
would
go
say
and
it says
Mesilas
in Teirim,
Nefesh.
"Chokesi telechu, and esati geshmechem b'itam." If you go my ways, I'll give rain at its time. And he said this is Talucha.
So when is the Satik Shmechem Bitam? Is Talucha when it rains on Talucha?
He would say, like, it's time you go. It's a nice weather. Like, what's the cons? You go when it's pouring rain. Your hats, the dye of the
Would
hats
come
would
down
drip
the
down,
face.
and people would come back to them standing with black faces, and the shirts were totally, full of black ink. I say that's you do it like that one time. Give it a chaim for all those that went on Talucha was very that ever didn't start the Fabringen of Simchas Torah. Or I'm sorry, at the end of the Fabringen of Simchas Torah before Akaf is that I would always ask my Zayda She'al Tzirik. That was one of the.
Everyone came back from Talucha, yeah.
Yeah, he was. That was wanted to know
Because the
everyone-
Fabringen
the last group.
officially went till everyone was back from Talucha.
Yeah, I mean most guys, all the Bachrim, unless you were involved with Chazara, ever missed the first chunk of the Fabringen.
Right.
If you're lucky, you got to the end, and most guys, a lot of guys, missed that entire Fabringen. If you went further, Rebbe Kiyadu one time spoke about the smart boys, those who go to closer locations to come back earlier.
Right.
Obviously, the Rebbe said it's not the Kavana, of course. But yeah, Talucha and him were synonymous.
Another major tkuf in his life was in the mid Lamids when the Rebbe was coming out with Mivtzayim, one after another.
Right. I would say if there was ever a period in Dira Shvi that he shined the most was during those really started from summer Lamed Gimel, Lamed Dal, Lamed Hey. During that period, it was just a marathon of new Heirais in the Mitzayim, in the tanks, and the Ufaratsta. Everything just took on a whole new level. Every other week, my Fabringen I was coming out with new initiatives and new things that should be implemented. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, Tzach was the address for all of these activities. When in the summer of Lamed Gimel, the Rebbe was koching very much in Ve'elu Mi'enkim. The Hair has a very nice article on that. Months before the Yom Kippur War, which happened on Yom Kippur of 1973, Tafshin Lamed Daled, the Rebbe was stirring very much to do pu'ulas with children. To gather children, to learn Torah with them, that the children should hold rallies, Sabbath Kaiso, and say.
By the way, it's interesting.
rituals.
We printed that article in the Hair, the Tishrei of October 7th.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So my Zayda was then. He went there to stroll that summer. I think two of his daughters was in school then in the Bisrivka there. So before he went, he asked the Rebbe what he should speak about, and the Rebbe said it's never been more of a appropriate time to basically einnehmen the Welt with Yiddishkeit in the sense of Torah mitzvahs and Elim came to talk about to encourage the various Meses over there to get involved with these pulos. In general, at any time he either took a trip there to Yisrael, which was around 3-4 times. There was no vacation time. It was meeting one Menam Meset to another Menam Meset to Yerushalayim, to Kiryat, back to Kfar Chabad. You have to see this duches, and he wrote to there, but literally his step by step of everything he did during the day. Meeting with Rabbi Ephraim Wolf, meeting with Yitzhak Gansberg, meeting with Zush Volmovsky, meeting with Shmuel Chafer, and all the other Askanim and Eretz Yisrael then. But non-stop, and making sure that they were on top of their game and fulfilling all of the Rebbe's Heirais. So that summer was the beginning of like I said before, like a marathon of non-stop ulas. And then Chanukah came around. I mean, that Tishrei was a gefährliche Tishrei. About the Tekiyas and by Malkeinu was a very very, very heartsick moments. And then Chanukah was the first time that the Rebbe wanted to make a shturdim for that there shouldn't be a single Jewish home without the Lichtigkeit of Hanukkah. So my Zayda then found this guy. He's actually still around. He's in his mid to late 90s now.
He came to visit our office once.
Oh, yeah?
Was he the same one that made the Neshek?
Yeah.
Yeah,
His name was Tibor Cooperstein.
He made the menorahs, the Mitzvah menorahs that we have today, and also the Neshek candles.
So he was manufacturing equipment for the war efforts. So he had like a metal factory. So if you know my Zayda worked, he heard of this metal, and he knows that everyone's a menorah. So maybe we can contact the guy that manufactures metal to design menorah kits, tin menorahs.
This is the menorahs that we're using till today from Mitzvah. It's the same menorah.
I mean, that looked a little different.
Look different, but it's the same idea. Yeah.
So he wrote to the Rebbe about this. Zayda wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe wrote a beautiful bracha to him. Unfortunately, a year or so before, his son was killed in a mugging attack. They got the wrong guy. The people, the attackers. Long story short, he was killed, and the Rebbe wrote that through his efforts in making these menorahs, Shiyar Mazale, in the Mazel of the Bnei Beisei, for all good things, as it's explained in Teir and the Rebbe mentioned a few other Sfarim with the name in it, and underline each word of Ashrei Chalkei, V'Golos Chusei, Chulu V'Chulu. So my Zayda and all those who were, who was involved with that mitzvah, it's just it was a beautiful bracha. And then that continued, and from there, I was able to write that, let's say, there's a shliach, and Shlomo needs this amount, and Shlomo Levittin needs this amount, and Shimka Lazarov needs this amount. This is how things operated. Tzach, what started in Tzach, eventually spread throughout America and throughout the world, of course. But I didn't mention earlier, in the early years of Tzach, in the 50s, in the Yuds, there were different branches of Tzach everywhere. There was Tzach of Boston, Tzach of New Haven, Tzach of Rochester, Tzach of multiple places in New Jersey. Till today, you have Tzach in Montreal, Tzach in Paris, Tzach in Argentina. Then it was in Brazil. I remember seeing letters from Herschel Hitchrick then, Tzach in Brazil. And then there was also, I'm missing a few locations, but yeah, Tzach was a Milan. I saw a few letters to Reb Geshe Mendel where it's addressed on Haldot Tziegotus Chabad, Snif Milan. So, Tzach was that was the operating arm for all Inyanim of Afatza.
Right.
Tzach of Morocco.
Eventually things changed, and like the Shluchim became Merkez, and then, but then in New York area, everything is still till today.
A few places. First one, Israel, of course, that was the original place. But in Montreal, it's remained that way. In Paris.
Right, the Lubavitch.
Australia, I forgot to mention, of course, Melbourne, it's the Shluchim or Tzach. Toronto was Tzach. Is still Tzach. But yeah, those years, Lamed Dal, Lamed Hey, a few years ago for Tishrei, I arranged a panel with 4 or 5 Chassidim who were for the Bad Talmid Datim, of a few of Chassidim who were Bachman, then of course were involved with Pulas, and the reason why I did that is because reading these duches and hearing these Zechrenis from people was like, I felt like these was titled when, what was it called? Mitzayim hit the streets or something like that. Lubavitch hit the streets. The Mitzayim era when Lubavitch hit the streets. It's on YouTube. You can watch that. But it was a fascinating era in Lubavitch when all these things. So one very powerful answer my grandfather got then was he wrote to the Rebbe that we had a meeting about. This was after the incident in Malot, which I think the Herr wrote about as well. Fortunately, there was a school, I think, from Tzfas that was on a field trip to Malot,
Right.
a town in northern
I just want to mention
Israel.
that Pearson Rishon over here, that the head is actually working on a new endeavor, a new book, which is going to cover the time of Tzayim,
Beautiful.
plus other campaigns that the Rebbe launched. But
Looking forward.
and you mentioned Malot. I'm saying it's going to have the history. It's going to have everything that a chassid needs to get fired up about the Mitzvayim.
Very good. I have the schos of doing the interviews for the Mitzvayim column, which is ongoing now.
This year, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Definitely that elements of that's going to be included for sure.
yeah. The nice thing about the Mitzvayim column is not just the history, but it's also the ongoing impact of these Mitzvayim,
And the practical
implications of them,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
everyone can relate to.
If you,
And,
if you don't know what we're talking about, make sure to subscribe at thehead.org so you can read these columns as they're coming out the next few months.
So getting back to Lamed Daled, so he wrote into the Rebbe that we had a meeting after the Maisa of Malot, and the Rebbe spoke about very strong about Mitzvah Mezuzah and Bechalal about increasing in all Inyanim Yiddishkeit and to go into the streets and encourage Yidden for Tefillin. Tefillin already existed from Chav Zayin. So my Zaidy wrote to the Rebbe that we had a meeting about it and we're planning on following up. I think the following week or so. So the Rebbe writes like this, which is a very fundamental answer for every Meiset and every Chassid to to always have in mind. The Rebbe wrote as follows: Harei ad az, until the next meeting that you mentioned. Yicheles ve'efsher la'mitzayim shlita. It would be possible for those who do mitzayim. Lichbesh es kol New York v'sivyo yiseho u'v'darchineim b'shalom. To conquer the entire New York and its surrounding areas in a peaceful and pleasant manner. Today, I think one of the areas which, it's kind of hard to retrieve from, before Gimel Tammuz, was the sense of urgency that there was a fire burning under every single one of us to get the work done. There was no, let's talk about it Monday at 9 a.m., let's follow up about the next. Everything had to happen now and here and now. There was no, everything obviously became much more professional and much more developed over the years. But this was the Rebbe's general approach. If it's important, it has to be done now.
And that was Reb Dovid's MO.
Yeah. I say that was. I think that from that day on, there was just, it didn't stop. The reports were coming in, and the Rebbe, he was finding out how many Bachar went to various locations. And the day he was writing mezuzahs and tefillin, and the Rebbe came out with 5 Mitzvayim. That's how it started. And later on, the Rebbe came out with 10 Mitzvayim. The whole summer, the Rebbe gave $5. Whoever didn't go on America Shlichus or the stayed in Crown Heights and did Mitzvayim, whatever it was, the Rebbe gave $5 to. I know a lot of people that still have the $5 bill. Whoever got connected the Chamishas Mitzvayim then. But I mentioned before in Tav Shalom Adalet, the last day of Hanukkah, the Rebbe told my grandfather that anyone who is mishtatif in Mitzvah Chanukah will receive $1 from me. This is before, obviously. This is 12 years or so before the Rebbe started giving me $1. So the Rebbe, in his Silka Palta, gave out dollars. You have to first get a tzedakah from Zaidy that you're mishtatif in Mitzvah Chanukah, give it to Maskiris, and then you were able to go. It was like a whole process, and then you were able to receive $1 from the Rebbe. So Deher wrote about this when you wrote about Chanukah Lamed Daled, and the Rebbe gave every person who was mishtatif. This is how Mitzvayim started. In Purim, again, the Rebbe told my Zayda through every Chanukah, whoever will be mishtatif in Mitzvah Purim, they will receive $1. So, like das Tachten, the Rebbe wanted these things to take off, and to incentive it would be to receive $1 from him. And Mitzvah Purim that year was Sturmdik. Really started earlier in the army bases. Tzach would send out Bachrim and couples to army bases in the mid to late chafs during the Vietnam War to be there for soldiers that would have no other way of celebrating Purim. They would come with the Megillos, Mishloach Manos, Matan Stavyenim, was like a very big. And by the Purim Febring, you hear in the audio them saying that they just returned from Fort wherever it is, and the Rebbe would tell them to L'chaim, and it was very special to the Rebbe that guys went out to these army bases, which was obviously done under Tzach, Rabbi Kastel. He should be gesund. He was the organizer of these visiting the Shabbatons and arranging people to go to visit evening with Chabad, having guys go over to people's apartments and homes to learn with them. Maybe various yeshivas and Shabbatons. It was all Rabbi Kastel. So he started working for Mitzvah Tefillin. My Zaidy approached him once when Rebbe came up with Mitzvah Tefillin, if he would like to get involved. He was a younger man then, and that's when the rest of his work in Tzach started. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of hadracha that he received, many minus, which Mr. Shem will be printed in the book, and hopefully I can be zeicha to give the deher as well.
Yeah, and I also hope to have him on the podcast at a certain point.
Yeah, he would be great. A lot of schusim.
Okay, so you actually have on the table here a lot of binders with pictures and answers, and it's so vast. We didn't even get it yet, and we covered. I mean, we were here for a long time, so I want to ask. I mean, this is why you're writing a book, and there's more binders over there. This is why you're writing a book, mm-hmm. because every element in every area that we covered, there's much more to write, and there's details and there's documents, and you're just giving really the Rashi Prakim of it all. Is there anything else or any closing thoughts that you want to share that's important for those that are going to be listening? Takeaways.
Everyone has what to contribute to the Rebbe's Kavanah. My grandfather was many people would say, not the most qualified in the sense of professionalism to run various organizations, but that's not what the Rebbe looks for in a chassid. The Rebbe wants loyal soldiers, and if you're a soldier ready to carry out the general's command, we need you. We need you to be there. We need you for the work. It's irrelevant a person's background, the knowledge. This was the whole idea of Tzidek Kodesh Chabad, that first, there was no such a thing in Derech Shvi as getting old. The Rebbe made it very clear in day one, very in the beginning. Tzidek Kodesh Chabad, this is a young generation. This is youth. The whole Derech Shvi is youth. You could be saying Kapitel Tzadik Ches, Tzach, and still be young. That's not Aaron Karzanovsky, when he would talk about when he would speak at the Chalamayid V'idos Helamis, the convention, he would say, make with his white beard, it's a faginigan to speak here at Tzidek Kodesh Chabad. Like he would consider himself from Tzidim for the youngsters. But that's a message that I learned from his life, and I think everyone can learn from him. And that it's not about capabilities; it's about being committed to the cause, and it's about being loyal. First of all, who you represent and what you represent. And the keiches are there. The Rebbe said that countless amount of times, that you have the Rebbeim give the keiches, the Rebbe gives the keiches, and we just have to want to zustellen, like they say, to come up to bat, and it's not optional. The Rebbe said it on day one that we need every single chassid, every yid to participate in this effort, and we should all help in that our efforts should bear fruit to the Gula.
Amen. Thank you very much. Yasher Keach, and a lot of hatzlacha with getting it done, and appreciate everything that you shared.
It's my pleasure. Legacy.